All right, y'all. I'm here on time. I don't know how I did that. It's been a day. So Debbie has never had naan before. So I wanted to show her. Naan is very much like a pita bread, but it's thicker. Kind of like a flatbread. And you eat it with hummus. And it's fantastic when you haven't eaten all day. So we have the sentencing hearing for Othal Wallace, who we watched the trial on, and he was convicted of manslaughter in the shooting death of Officer Jason Raynor, which was absolutely infuriating. I was going to put together kind of a recap, but I couldn't do it. So if you all remember, there was the body cam footage where Jason Raynor walks up to him, says, "Hey man, what's going on?" And he asks him a question back, refuses to answer his questions. And then within 30 seconds, he has shot Officer Raynor in the head. And his defense team argued that it was self-defense because he was scared Jason Raynor was going to harm him. So he is here for sentencing. It is up to 30 years. And just forewarning, Jason Raynor's friends and family are going to testify, and it's going to rip your heart out. And then Mr. Wallace is going to testify, and you're going to probably throw things. But this is what happens in our court system.
All right,
This
good
is
morning.
Volusia County,
This is
Florida.
Florida versus Othal Wallace. The case number is 2021-303-347 CFDB. The defendant is present in the courtroom. Counsel, will you identify yourselves for purposes of the record?
R.J. Lorenzo, State Attorney.
Jason Lewis, State Attorney's Office. Anthony Manning, State Attorney's Office.
And for the defense?
Gary Wood for the defense.
Tim Probisco for the defense.
Terry Shoemaker for the defense.
Very well. In anticipation of today's sentencing, the court has reviewed the pre-sentence investigation as well as letters that were submitted independent of the pre-sentence investigation by way of notice of filing. The following letters were read by the court. John Russo, Tara P., no last name, Ricky Garino, Jackie Erlinson, Diana Zervulis, Tom C., no last name, Sandra Etlinger, Chris Maher, Stephanie Campanero, Jakeem Heath, Sarah, no last name, Ben Willems, Leslie Turner, the Garino family, Pamela Covert, Leanne P., no last name. And then from the defense, a letter from Chandler Tucker. There were multiple letters that were filed in the court file, which were stamped by my staff as ex parte communications. The court did not review any of those letters.
So what he's talking about real quick, I had to really think for a minute. The ex parte communication is where it's sent straight to the judge. It's not sent through an official filing. So you're supposed to file it through the court and then it goes to the judge. So that's why there was a good chunk of letters that he didn't actually read because they weren't filed properly.
If there is something that was filed by someone that you think I should review, you need to tell me because I have not read anything other than the folks' communication that came through the PSI or your notice of filing.
Yes, Your Honor. And then I apologize because I didn't know. I saw the court's stamp on there, but I would ask the court to review the letters that have been received for the defense. I saw it, Mr. J also said, I think there were a couple letters from, on behalf of the Raynor family, on behalf of the state. I saw a couple of those as well, too. I don't think the court accepted those according to the stamp. But I would ask the court to read the letters on behalf of the defense.
Well, that's going to take a few minutes because there are letters that I haven't read. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There are 19 letters in the court file which I have not read because they were submitted without any notice of filing and they were ex parte communications. You want me to read all 19 of them?
I do.
Your Honor, I have one that we received that was stamped as an ex parte. It's by a Paul Patterson that the state would ask the court to read as well. It was dated October 26th.
Have you seen it?
I have.
Okay, then submit it. Then what I'll
So
do
the
is I'll take a
defense
few,
filed them wrong.
a recess and go read all 20 letters. If you'll give me, we'll resume at 9 a.m. Okay.
So he took about a 30-minute recess during this, and then they're back. I edited it all
Those
out.
in the audience, this is your last warning. Anyone that's recording or making any type of copy of this court session, unless you're a member of the media, you will be asked to leave. Thank you. All rise, please. Court court's back in session.
Please be seated.
Sounds like Florida.
All right, Counsel, what was the name of the individual that's supposed to testify this Zoom?
Stephen Kennedy, Your Honor.
Okay, he's already. All right, I have reviewed the following letters that were filed in the court file. All of them were stamped, not reviewed because of the ex parte communication. A letter from Guardians of the Thin Blue Line, letter from Ms. Oliver, letter from Platt, letter from Elise Lewis, letter from M. Dixon, a letter from Michelle Greer, but I think she was just a person submitting the letter. The person who wrote the letter or signed it was someone or an institution. Alani DeWitt, I think it was. A letter from Deborah Wilson, a letter from Major Davis, a letter from Ayad, my last name, a letter from Malik Butler, a letter from Kim Hart, Sylvia Warden, Bonita Wilson, Christopher Parker, Bridget Kirkwood, Ron Johnson, Robert Tucker, P. Patterson, and Carla Brown. All right. Is there any objections to the pre-sentence investigation?
Not actually, Your Honor, but we have no issue with the court considering Sheriff Chitwood's letter in connection, just like the other letters submitted. But
Say it again?
we would not object to the court's consideration of Sheriff Chitwood's letter as a letter of a friend of the court. We would object to the court's consideration of it in official capacity as a PSI recommendation.
Oh, okay. Well, I should consider it as a letter like any other letter that was filed.
We agree with that, Your Honor.
All right. Well, we're going to go with the state side first, and then the defense gets
Your Honor, we have some witnesses to call.
very well. You may proceed.
We call Sergeant Joseph Searce.
No, I don't. If you can have him at the podium, please. I'm sorry, witness now.
Your Honor, Sergeant Searce has prepared a statement he was going to provide.
You can test this. Right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
State your name, please,
Joseph Michael Searce.
and your occupations.
I'm a sergeant for Daytona Beach Police Department.
And how long have you been there, sir?
A little over 21 years.
Do you have personal knowledge and professional knowledge of Officer Jason Raynor?
I do.
Were you the supervisor?
I was.
Do you have a statement you'd like to have the court consider?
I do.
Would you please provide it to the court?
Thank you for this time, Your Honor. There's some things I'd like to share with you about Jason and who he was to me and his shift mates. We were assigned to District 2 Charlie Platoon. It's commonly called Charlie East. Soon meant a little bit more to us as we became a family. Jason was a big part of that family. We worked together, laughed together. The officers hung out together. Some of us had left to other assignments, other agencies, and even new careers. But we're still Charlie East, still part of that family. We even have our own token that we made. We made one for Jason. And we still communicate because of those friendships that were made, and Jason was the core of those friendships. He was a brother, he was a friend, he was a confidant, he was a defender, and he was an informal leader and a mentor to many of the other officers. Jason cared. I met the shift on January 5th, 2020. And as far as Jason goes, it did not take me long to realize and think, I like this kid. Soon after that, I was trying to make bargaining tools and trades to get him over on my side of the river, which was the Ridgewood area, because of the type of crime that we fought. It's kind of a mixture of both beach side and the west side. Jason had an old school work ethic that you don't see very often. He could handle the calls of 2 to 3 officers when needed. It's a very busy shift. We would handle 50, sometimes 70 calls a night. And Jason was one of the most reliable officers I've ever worked with. He had the job knowledge that he shared with not just his fellow officers, but also with me. He was always up to date on case law and legal bulletins and such. But he helped everybody. He wouldn't just show up and help and then leave like some officers do. He would actually write some of the reports for him and make a template for him right there on scene and then go off to another location to help. You could see if the officers trusted him, and I soon did. And I knew I could rely on him. If I had a situation that I was busy, I could call Jason, but can you get there and see what you got and let me know? And then I didn't have to worry. But the type of person Jason was, he was working during the night one night. I was pretty close by him. He pulled up to Mulberry in Congress, which is maybe 200 feet from where he was shot. There was an individual slumped over on the sidewalk by the drainage drain, and it was an apparent overdose. Jason knew who he was. He was an undesirable, lengthy criminal history, drug user, drug dealer, just a local criminal. But you heard Jason get on the radio and the urgency in his voice. And as I was pulling up, I got to see Jason quickly work the scene and with purpose. He Narcaned the individual, he laid him back, performed CPR, and was able to stabilize him and for evac to come. And when he left, he was still alive. But what impressed me is that we can all go through those motions, but Jason cared. Personally, he was responsible, hardworking, and he enjoyed life. He was already a homeowner in his mid-20s. I think it's a small percentage of people, and it shows his hard work ethic. He liked his nice cars. He'd always come in, tell me about what he got done to his new car. A few months later, he'd have another new car, a different one. And I'd ask him, like, why do you have another one? And then he'd go back to the old one. He liked the old muscle cars. They were newer cars, but that type. But he liked life. He liked to enjoy things. Professionally, at about 3:30 in the morning, he was done at 4. I can almost always rely on him showing up in my office while I'm doing some of the administrative stuff, and he'd sit there, and he'd just, Sarge, what do you think? What could I have done different? And we would talk about his goals and things, that he was doing great, areas from my experience that he could work on. He strived to be better because he cared. He was a good natured. When you think back, he was irritated at times, maybe in a little bit of a bad mood, but almost all the time he was always bringing the smiles to the shift, laughing about something, sharing a joke. He was just upbeat. He had a positive aura about him, and you couldn't really get him upset. He did get coined the smoke show, and that was like the only thing we could rile him up with. And that was because some of the cars would get away from him when you try to light him up, and they'd get away. And
FD Food Fairy taught me that smoke show means like hottie, not like that. So I wonder if they know that they were calling him hot.
In foot chases, he wasn't a passive person. We would tease him about that. We would do shift dinners on Sundays. We work every other weekend, so Sunday night we would get together and we would rotate. Some people would buy stuff or make stuff and bring it in. And there was one, it seems minor, but it wasn't to me. I had bought pizza for everybody, and of course Jason right away was like, "Thank you, what do I owe you?" And of course the answer is like, "Nothing, you know. I get pizza, it's no big deal." So he proceeds to try to give me like $15, and we fight back and forth until finally pull rank. And I'm like, "I'm ordering you to keep your money." I leaving there thinking I won. Later on, when I'm at the end of the shift, I open up my drawer, and there's $15. Just shows his character, and it's because he cared. If you didn't know Jason, you'd say he was stoic, and he was, to some extent. But when you talk to him, he was like everybody else. You could see when he was worried, he had concerns. When I would speak to him, he was excited about a love interest, and then when that went back south, I could see that he was sad about it. We didn't get into details about it, but he didn't have to. He let you in enough so that you know what he was thinking. Jason didn't take much time off of work. He was always there. And when he wasn't there, it did seem different. There was a vacation that he took. He had a family member that was fighting some health issues, and he was concerned. So he took a vacation, traveled to see them. And we would text on occasion how it was going, and he would kind of brag, like the doctors can't even explain how the tests are going so well. You know, it's kind of like, you know, because he's a Raynor. And say he rented a boat, took the family member out, they caught 13 black bass. And you could just hear it a little bit, say here, but it was in text, you could see he was relieved. And he came back, and again, you could see that Jason cared. The Sunday he came home, I didn't know he was coming home that day, because we were working, and our next shift would be Wednesday, the day he was shot. But he texted me. It was a funny text. He's like, "I hear chow is at 8 o'clock." He's like, and the text said, "The hell is this?" And I was like, "Are you coming?" And then he shot me a picture of the briefing room, some of the food. And I came in, and we were all in there, took some goofy pictures, some of the last pictures we have of him. And we had dinner, and you could just see he was in it. He was happy. He was relieved. He was loose. And he's just in a good place in life. And as you look around, and we went to D.C. for his memorial, Jason had a lot of friends. Long ago, I knew an old Italian guy, and I don't know if he coined the phrase, someone else may know, but he would say if you have 5 friends when you die, that you die a wealthy man, if you can name 5 people. Jason had hundreds. Because he cared. It didn't matter what race, what size you were, what orientation you were. None of that ever mattered. I don't think it even registered. I had no idea at the time. It just kept growing and growing how many people knew him in other agencies, in other places, and it was just in a friendly manner. And the man that he became, obviously, he was from his upbringing, and I see his family, his mom, his dad, his sister, and he obviously learned to care from them. And there's not a word that I know of for a parent that loses a child. You can be a widow, you can be an orphan, but the only thing I can think of is grief. And everywhere in this statement where I said he cared, if you would replace it with he loved. And that's what Jason was. He loved life, he loved people. And he's not here because of the opposite. He's not here because of ignorance, hate, cowardice. And the last thing I want to share is after he was shot, Jason, you can see on his video, he's laying there grasping, trying to grab a hold of something. And I have to think what was going to his head. Was he trying to figure out what happened? Did he know what happened? Did he know he's in grave danger? And one of his close friends, Pat Erlinson, shows up. Pat's another victim in this tragedy. And what Jason said to Pat at that moment was, "Be careful, I might have AIDS." Jason, in his last moments of lucidness, possibly, was showing his love towards a fellow officer. He had been exposed weeks prior during an arrest with some blood, and he'd been taking medication, a cocktail of sorts, for a couple weeks. And we had talked a little bit about that prior, but those were the last things that I know that he spoke. And anything less than the maximum sentence in this case would be a tragedy for Jason. It would be a tragedy for law enforcement, and it would just embolden the hate and violent groups that are out there. And that's all I have. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas. State your next.
I don't think they live together. I think they were just talking about how they hang out at the station. Now, I will ensure that the word love is not used, just all bad garbage talk. So this is the police chief. He knows how to give a speech. Ooh, give me chills.
Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please state your name for the record.
Jakari Young.
And
I apologize for the audio too.
I'm the
Oh
Chief
gosh,
of
I spent
Police for the
forever.
Daytona Beach Police Department.
Chief, is it your intention today to make a statement for the court to consider for sentencing purposes?
Yes, it is.
Would you please do so?
Good morning, Your Honor. So I'm going to approach this statement in 3 parts, and then I'm going to make a request. The first is I want to tell you how the murder of Officer Jason Raynor affected the Daytona Beach Police Department. Then I'm going to tell you how the murder of Officer Jason Raynor affected the Daytona Beach community. And lastly, I'm going to tell you how the murder of Officer Jason Raynor affected me personally as the police chief. But I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the fact that the effects of all 3 combined could never compare to the pain, the hurt, and the anguish felt by Jason's family. So, as I sit here,
I have to ask, does anybody else get that drill sergeant vibe? Like, he is so authoritative. It gives me chills. To answer your question, I messed with the audio the best I could for hours today. It was so bad with the echo and the quiet and everything else. And yes, Florida is a death penalty state. The death penalty, I don't believe, was on the table. It was 1st degree, 2nd degree, and manslaughter. And the jury gave him manslaughter. I have the trial up if you haven't seen it. It's pretty interesting. We watched it, and none of us could really understand how he got manslaughter because the entire defense was he was in fear for his life. But they also presented evidence talking about his social media posts and I think they touched on his involvement with these anti-police groups and these hate groups, but right after it happened, or right before, he said something about getting a pig's blood on his boots. Like, I don't know. I don't understand how he got manslaughter, and people were outraged when the verdict came down.
2 years and 2 months later, I again want to take this moment to extend my most sincere and heartfelt condolences to the Raynor family. As it pertains to the Daytona Beach Police Department, there's probably nothing more traumatic and destabilizing than losing an officer in the line of duty, especially in the fashion that Officer Raynor lost his life. Officer Raynor's death had a profound impact on the entire department. It wreaked havoc on morale. We had officers that just simply, they were just trying to make it through the shift. There was no more proactivity. The goal was just simply to make it through the shift, so we were completely reactive. You had officers that just decided that they no longer had the heart for law enforcement, so they resigned. And then you had some that no longer had the heart to serve in law enforcement in Daytona Beach because they felt like it was too dangerous and it just wasn't worth it. So at one point, our vacancies were over 40 as a result of this. You had officers, through grief, there was a lot of resentment. There was a lot of blame. If I would have done this, this wouldn't have happened. If I would have done that, this wouldn't have happened. His current shift lieutenant was on his scheduled vacation when this happened. And every time I talk to his shift lieutenant, he says, "Chief, had I been there, this wouldn't have happened." But through all of that, the main part that I can't get past is had the defendant just sat down in that vehicle, this wouldn't have happened. So it's taken time, but we're in a better place today as a department, but it's taken a while because even this drastically affected my ability to recruit. I was sending recruiters to the police academy, and the recruiters was asking, well, why not Daytona? And a lot of them were saying, well, we saw what happened to Officer Raynor. It's not worth it. It's too dangerous. So they would go a different route. So it's taken a while, but the department has now recovered and we're almost at full staffing. But this whole thing has just been extremely difficult because Jason was a cherished member of the Daytona Beach Police Department and the entire agency, and I mean the entire agency, is still grappling with the loss. Now I'm going to tell you how it affected the Daytona Beach community. If you paid attention to what was happening, especially on social media, it was very divisive and hostile. But the overwhelming majority of our community, they respect and they appreciate law enforcement. They know they need the police to keep the city safe. There was an outpouring of support after Officer Raynor was shot and his passing. And if you saw the outpouring during his funeral service, and all of those people from not just Daytona, all over Volusia County, all over Central Florida, that was lining the streets, it was a clear indication of the support that we have in this community. We're never going to get 100%, but it was a clear indication of the support that we have in this community. You can still traverse throughout areas of the community, and you'll see signs in the yards. Daytona strong, Raynor strong. We ran out of those signs, Your Honor. And it wasn't just in one section of the community. It wasn't just in Pelican Bay. They were in Midtown. They were all over the Daytona Beach community. And I'm grateful for that, because it truly showed, regardless of some of the things that you hear, it truly showed that we have a community that supports and respects the very difficult job that we have in law enforcement. And I'm going to tell you how this affected me. On June 23rd of 2021, I had only been the police chief for 7 months. Just 7 months. And I prayed that I would never get a phone call like the one that I received that night. When you hear the words, as a police chief, you have an officer down. It's a gut punch. It's a gut punch. It makes it hard to breathe, just sitting back thinking about that. Because my number one goal as a chief is that I want to do my part to make sure every officer makes it home at the end of their shift to their family. So when you have an officer down, that hurts. It hurts quite a bit. Prior to becoming the chief, I had the unfortunate experience of attending several law enforcement funeral services. And there comes a part in the service, Your Honor, where the honor guard folds a flag, and they hand that flag to the police chief. And the police chief then turns to the family, and he takes a knee. And he has to present that flag, folded flag, to the family of a fallen officer. I've seen it far too many times. And prior to becoming a chief, I said, Lord, I hope you spare me from having to do that. I really hope you spare me from having to do that. But as a direct result of the defendant's actions, I had to do that twice on August 23rd. I had my honor guard fold 2 flags, and I had to take that knee. And I had to hand 1 flag to Jason's mother, and then I had to hand the 2nd flag to Jason's father. And I'm getting a sickening feeling in the pit of my stomach, just reflecting back on having to do that. So I've been in law enforcement 22 years now, and I've loved this job. I've loved it. But this incident was the first time. This incident was the first time that I questioned, is it worth it? I legitimately questioned, is it worth it? So I can remember sitting, and I listened as the defendant took the stand. And he talked about a little bit about his background. He talked about born in Gainesville, moved to Daytona, moved to DeLand, moved to Broward County, and then moved back to Daytona. So let me tell you a story. I grew up in Broward County myself. I grew up in Broward County in the 90s, teenager in the 90s. And I've had contact with law enforcement in the 90s in Broward County. And I can tell you, I wish that I was approached in Broward County like Officer Raynor approached the defendant, because I wasn't approached that way. But I can tell you what I did. I complied. And I made sure I got back to my house safely, because I did what I was told to do. So here's my request. The maximum sentence is 30 years. Officer Jason Raynor was 26. He didn't even get 30 years on this earth. At 26, most of us are still trying to figure it out. But because the defendant decided to play the judge, the jury, and the executioner, his life was cut short at 26 years of age. So because of that, the maximum sentence should be non-negotiable. It should be non-negotiable. Thank you.
Thank you. Your next witness.
Raynor, Your Honor.
Powerful, right? I bet he gives a good motivational speech too. So this is his father. It gets really bad, but you have to hang in there until the defendant gives his speech. It's unbelievable.
Good proceed. Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Todd Raynor.
And your relationship to Jason?
I am Jason's father.
Are you here today prepared to make a statement for the court to consider for sentencing purposes?
Yes.
Would you please do so?
Thank you. Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
I had a tough time writing a statement, so I decided to write my son first. Jason, you were a son that surprised me since day one. I was at work, your mom called to me to say you were on your way. There was no way I could make it home and get to you at the hospital, so I called a friend known as Uncle T. He drove to the house, and, well, we know Uncle T was nervous as he could be. I drove from my place of employment, looking to be there for you when you met the world, and I made it. As years passed, I experienced the best of a father-son relationship that you could have. We loved the outdoors, we loved our time together, and we loved each other unconditionally. You lived with your mother through grammar school, seeing me on weekends and holidays. You lived with me through your freshman and junior year of high school, participated in football, and tutored others in math. In your senior year, you felt compelled to be with your mom and went to Florida. My direction was simple for both you and your sister. The options were to go to work or to go to college when you graduated high school. If you went to college, you apply for a student loan. If you graduate, I will pay off the loan. If you fail, the loan was on you. You went to the academy paying it yourself. You worked 3 part-time jobs to do it, not mentioning a thing to me. Your focus was to be a police officer, and was always to be exactly that. After passing the academy, you were faced with a state exam. After 3 times taking the exam while keeping the 3 jobs, you missed by 2 points each time. You wanted to admit defeat and suggested you were going to join the Marines. This was unacceptable to me. Not that you wanted to stand for the U.S. and serve our country, but you were giving up on your dream. After a conversation between you and I, you made the decision to go back through the academy. You passed the state exam the first time with no issue. You've been honored with certificates of merit for helping those in need in Port Orange, preventing suicide. You saved lost souls when needed. You saved lost souls by when needed, and more importantly, providing compassion and emotional support to all who have made contact with you. You have countless people you have touched with your kindness and humor. A son that every dad would be proud to say, that's my son. Judge Zambrano, there's no way, unless one has walked in our shoes,
convey the hurt that has been inflicted on our family and those that knew Jason. For me, it involves counseling, sleepless nights, antidepressants. My live and let live attitude, wishing all humanity all they deserve, is gone. The definition of equality has been changed to hate for all that preach it, as most of them are nothing more than haters. They look for no peace or equality, only a reason to hate. Peace is an easy path. Hate takes conscientious effort. During the trial, I was approached by a woman who I assume was the defendant's mother. Her comment to me was, "I know this means little, but I'm truly sorry." To that I said, "Thank you." And after that encounter, as we passed in the hallway in the morning, we often said good morning to each other. She saw and felt the pain and had the compassion to recognize it, and I felt the need to reciprocate in kind. Small words, but it showed neither of us had hate for each other. When one speaks emotionally or wear your heart on your sleeve, more times than not, it shows one's real self. The social activities and comments lived and made by the defendant, which were not allowed at trial, would only add to the defendant and what his true heart is. I'm angered at the statement of passed versus died by the defendant's attorneys. It showed no class. It showed lack of ignorance. It showed ignorance and lack of compassion. I'm insulted that the pigs was used by the defendant, knowing exactly what it meant. But when asked what it meant under oath, the defendant lied and produced some definition of people who don't see me as a human. Humans do not kill humans because they're asked, "Do you live here?" or to sit down. So seeing him as a human would only be a facade. The defendant is not a human. He has proved this on his own. After the shooting which led to my son dying by the decision of the defendant, he showed his true compassion by standing over my son and said, "Fuck that guy." Never called 911. Never called anyone to call 911 for him. When I was asked about capital punishment by the state, I had to think about this. Families and children outside of my family were to be considered. It took me a while to wrestle with this internally, but I felt it was to be left to a jury of 12. Never did I think a jury of 12 would not understand the difference between a hung trial and a mistrial. It seems like they felt if no decision was made, the defendant would walk free. Apparently, the law prevents providing this information when pretrial instructions are given to a jury. The lawmakers should review and amend. I asked many officers working today, and by every definition and what they do, day in and day out, Jason was doing his job legally. There's an injustice here, Judge Zambrano, one we all must live with. I'm requesting you to correct the wrong and issue the sentence of 30 years with no eligibility of parole. Conceal carrying a handgun with no license to intentionally killing my son. The defendant shows no remorse pre or post verdict and is a danger to society. Filled with hate with others, regardless of race, religion, or occupation. Evidence of this is his regretting his inflammatory posts and reportings, but never apologizing to our family for shooting my son. Additionally, I'd like to go on the record of asking the DOJ to deny any game time while in prison. Let him walk out in 30 years. My son, Jason Raynor, is serving a life sentence. Never to see his family again. We will never see him. Only in our thoughts and memories. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Next witness.
Peggy Raynor, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name for the record?
My name is Margaret Peggy Raynor.
Ms. Raynor, are you the mother of Jason Raynor?
I am.
Have you prepared a statement you wish the court to consider this morning for sentencing purposes?
I have.
Would you please share it?
Thank you. Thank you for this time, Your Honor. One thing Jason's father and I have in common is we both wrote a letter to Jason. I'd like to say, instead of writing the court listing my son Jason's qualities of family, loyalty, honesty, courage, humor, integrity, and honor, I choose to write a letter to Jason, pretty much going down memory lane a little bit. Dear Jason, I still have your favorite toy and sports-themed baby blanket that your grandmother made for you. I had planned to give it to your baby, the baby you will never father, the baby you will never see grow up and become a wonderful adult. This experience was taken from you, and this breaks my heart. Jason, you give such good hugs. I could really use one right now. A picture of you at a young age sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor with a bowl of dry cereal gives me a smile. At a young age, you chose to obey me and follow the rule, do not go into the refrigerator without mommy. I'll get the milk, we'll get it together. Watching you eat the cereal, you're so cute. Even your eyes are smiling, your beautiful eyes. One of those beautiful eyes was shot out with a bullet, and the other eye wouldn't even open wide. You know what happened, Jason. At least you know now. Remember the times when you would spin things on your fingertips, spinning small couch pillows, basketballs, and even the TV remote? We never got the chance to see if you could spin and toss a pizza crust in the air. Thank you, Jason, for taking your first job where I worked. What a privilege for me to see you being honest, hardworking, and wanting to learn. A young man with integrity you were outside of our home. I'm so proud of you. When you helped me cooking and serving for the homeless and hungry in our community, it was greatly appreciated by many, many people. Jason, your willingness to help others has blessed their lives more than we know. Jason, you have wonderful friends that miss you, and of course your family is struggling. I have heard amazing things about your kindness, generosity, faithfulness, thoughtfulness, and your laughter. Your short life of only 26 years has blessed us with your love. Jason, without seeing you or hearing your voice or reading your texts, our lives are forever changed. I have your first picture that I ever took of you. It's a sonogram picture. It's hard to tell what you are, but you're there. last pair of shoes that I bought. I don't know if there's a big difference. Even though 26 years, it's not long enough, Judge. It's not long enough. You were a wonderful, precious son, brother, grandson, godson, cousin, uncle, and friend. From school ambassador, where you helped others in time of need, to now you are still helping others even after you're gone. I am grateful to God that I had you in my life, and I am grateful that I will see you again in heaven. Be waiting for me. I will need a hug. Love you, Mom. I have pictures of Jason, sports trophies and awards. I even have a picture of Jason holding his hamster, Spunky. I have greeting cards that I bought for Jason's birthday that he never received. I still have them. Never got the chance to give it to him. I won't take the time to read those letters, but they're here if you want to read them. Those cards. I entered the court of justice, and I sat through the trial, and I experienced what felt like my son Jason was on trial. With that, the bad language, I haven't heard this much bad language in years. I'm sorry. With all the bad language and the social media posts referring to the blood of a pig made me nauseous. God tells me in the Bible to be submissive to rulers and authorities, to be obedient, to be ready for every good work, to speak evil of no one, to avoid quarreling, to be gentle, and to show respect to all people. I respect the law. However, when people aren't given all the information about what is happening, or they enter the building with their minds already made up, or bullying others to agree with them, this isn't justice. It's not. It's not. Justice matters to Jesus, to me, to Jason. I know it matters to you. I know justice matters to you. Jason was protecting and serving his community in a kind manner. I am very proud of Jason. I Googled, by law, what happens if someone says stop and they don't. It says highlighted, under no circumstances can the person refuse to stop. Yeah. Jason said many, many, many times, stop. God knows our hearts and our intentions. He cannot be tricked with lies or rehearsed speeches. We need to respect each other and make better choices if we want a better life. I'm disgusted with the verdict of manslaughter. The video is the evidence. That's what I heard. The video is the evidence. There was no remorse by the shooter, now murderer. The shooter, now murderer, had a loaded concealed weapon not mentioned to Jason before it was used to shoot him in the head. The shooter, now murderer, fled the parking lot and posted on social media acknowledging proudly of the blood of the pig. There's no remorse. He left Florida. You know, Your Honor, you were there. You were at trial. You were there. God has given the court the responsibility to make the right decision for justice for Jason Raynor. If favor is shown to the wicked, he does not learn righteousness. We must all take responsibility for what we have done, good or bad. Remember, Jason Raynor is the one who was shot in the head, lost his eye, part of his skull, suffered for 55 days, and then died. Jason is the one who stood for justice. Your Honor, please make your stand for justice and make the right decisions, please. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Faith?
Melissa Raynor.
May I proceed?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Melissa Raynor.
You are the sister of Jason Raynor.
Correct.
Have you prepared a statement for the court to consider today?
Yes, I have.
Would you please share?
Thank you. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning.
I wear my heart and emotions on my sleeve. I wanted to be viewed as a human. Those were quoted during the testimony provided by the monster who murdered my brother. I ask, where was the humanity of shooting and leaving my brother there in pain and for death? I'd like to share with you the heart and emotion worn by my brother and how he made such an impact to this world in such a short life. A true human who showed compassion, genuine nature, and was always there for someone, even a stranger he didn't know. He was a protector to those he loved and held close. October 26, 1994. My best friend was born. I didn't know it just yet, but he would soon grow to become my role model and inspiration. Growing up, my brother and I shared your typical sibling arguments. Always picking on each other, making each other laugh. Our dry humor and bickering left many to wonder if we even liked each other. When quite the opposite, that was my best friend. My brother lived with me up until this monster took him from me. I hate saying the good die young because this right here is the definition. Now all my family and I have are the blood running through our veins that ties to him along with the memories that we share. Jason grew up in a world of not knowing how to fit in. He was a good kid and a gentle giant that many tried to bully to see how he would react. Instead, his soft-spoken and calm demeanor always diffused situations. This was something he was really good at and carried with him up until his adult life. He was a hard worker who worked 3 jobs to pay for his law enforcement academy, where he graduated on October 14, 2015. He was determined to work his way into making a difference into the community, to make a safer place for people, again, putting even a stranger above himself. Port Orange Police Department was where he started his journey. He had hoped to serve a long life career that he was passionate about. Unfortunately, his dream would soon become mine and my family's nightmare. On December 5th, 2018, Jason and 2 other officers from the Port Orange Police Department
successfully rescued a female attempting to take her own life on the Dunlawton Bridge in Port Orange, Florida. An award of achievement was provided to him for his bravery and compassion. That one sticks out the most to me, as that exemplifies who he was, always helping others, even a stranger. Throughout his short 5 years in law enforcement, he was awarded many outstanding achievements and recognitions in the community in both Port Orange Police Department and Daytona Beach Police Department. Jason was working towards the Narcotics Division, asking to be put in parts of town many of us don't want to even drive through. He was pushing towards his mission to make the community a safer place, even if it meant putting himself right in the middle of danger. Not many of us would put ourselves in these areas or situations. However, most men and women who wear the uniform put themselves in that same danger day in and day out. For that, I'm thankful for what they do, and I'm thankful for my brother dedicating his life to protect and serve, for he is the true hero. Jason will forever be my hero, my not-so-little brother, and my best friend. Missing him is like missing a part of my soul that will remain empty for eternity. I, along with many, will continue to be his voice and stand for what he believed in. To reference back to the beginning of my statement, Jason's bravery, courage, determination, and compassion he held as a human has no comparison against the cowardness monster asking to be viewed as a human. Jason will forever be the human I look up to, and I hope that more of humanity is just like him. His legacy will continue, and his name will be remembered.
That concludes our testimony.
All right, thank you. Defense, do you wish to offer any witnesses?
You.
Is Steve's iPhone, is that what you're?
Yes, I believe so. That's it. Shall I proceed, Your Honor?
You may proceed, you can hear us. I think it's connected to audio.
Mr. Kennedy, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Would you, for the record, give your full name?
Stephen R. Kennedy.
Okay. And how do you know?
I don't know if it matters or not, but that was all of the prosecution's witnesses. And so now we're on the defendant's family and friends that are testifying on his behalf.
The defendant, in this case, Othal Wallace.
I met him in a children's home.
In a what kind of home?
The children's home, the 39 Methodist Children's Home.
Okay. And
So hard to
how old were
understand.
you when you met him?
I believe I was 15.
Okay. And do you know about how old Othal was at the time?
No, I believe I was 14 and Othal was maybe 16.
Okay. And where was this at? What city was this at?
It's in a little town called Enterprise, Florida.
Okay. And how long have you known Mr. Wallace?
Ever since that time, I'm 29 now, so that would be 12, 13 years.
Okay. And Did the two of you live together in foster care?
Yes, he was actually my roommate.
Okay. And this was also in Enterprise?
Yes, at the children's home.
Okay. And what would you like to say about your knowledge of Othal, starting with when you two were roommates?
Ever since the first day I met Othal, I saw him at the gym for the first time. He was just coming back from wherever he was, and we just played basketball together for the first time. And I just was like, this guy is just so down to earth, so like fun spirited, and it was just fun ever since like the first day I met him. He took on like a role that's like my big brother, and he just taught me a lot, and he just helped me, because I was new to the whole foster care system, and he just like helped me navigate, kept me out of a lot of trouble, literally. He just showed me the ropes of how to navigate through the foster care system.
And about when was it that the two of you stopped living together as roommates?
Well, actually, Othal turned 18 while I was still in the foster care system, so he eventually ended up moving out, and but then once I turned 18, I had moved back out South Florida, and then I came back up to the Central Florida area, and then I became homeless, and I had to move back to the home, and it just so happened Othal was going through the same thing at the same time, and we ended up putting a plan together to both get an apartment. So we actually became roommates again as adults. I believe I was around 19 when that happened.
And where was this at? What city was this in?
This was in D-Land, Florida.
Okay. And then how long were the two of you roommates?
I want to say for that entirety, so for about a year.
Okay. And what was he like to live with?
By this time, I was just still like a young fellow, but Othal was just like, he was a couple years older than me, but like he was just so knowledgeable. He was like literally like he was a father by this time. He had a kid. His girlfriend at the time lived with us, and I was just like basically like the young brother living on the other side of the house, and he had his whole family living on his side, and I just saw him literally every day just interacting with his family, and it was so motivational. Like something gave me stuff that's in the book.
How would you see, what were your observations about Othal interacting with his children?
He was everything that we wished we had when we were growing up.
Okay. Did you see Othal acting in a loving, caring way for his children?
Every day. Like, I was so restricted because I lived in the house with kids. It was like, he just showed so much love to them. Like, every day you see him picking her up, his daughter, he's loving on her so hard. It's just the most amazing thing to see like your brother, like knowing where he came from, to see him being able to, like, how do you know how to do this, bro? Like why, like how? It's just crazy.
During that period of time, was Othal working?
Yes. I believe Othal was in school at the time. He was going to Daytona State College.
Okay.
To become a barber, I believe, because we both were in barber school at the same time.
Okay. And then you said you lived together for about a year, and then after that, did you go separate ways physically? You go live somewhere else?
Yeah. I believe him and his girlfriend at the time kept that apartment, and his daughter ended up moving into my old room, and I ended up becoming a roommate with someone else in another spot.
Did you and Othal stay in touch with one another?
Yes.
And would you see him very often?
Yes. That was around the time when his whole accident on the motorcycle happened and everything.
He got injured in a motorcycle accident? And was that pretty severe?
Yeah, I believe, yeah. It was like the whole thing about it. He was the first ICU patient, I believe, and like that's the I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Now, over the years, going forward from that period of time, did you continue to stay in touch with Othal?
Yeah.
In what way? I mean, how would you end up seeing him or communicating with him?
I mean, sometimes we'll talk on the phone all the time, and sometimes we'll link up and hang out.
Okay. And afterwards, did you, after you stopped being roommates, did you have occasions to see Othal interact with his children?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you now have your own children?
I don't have children yet. I have stepchildren, but I'm not a father myself, no.
Okay. So in the times that you saw in the years to follow Othal interact with his children, were you seeing the same type of interactions with his children as he was when you guys were living together?
Yes, it's amazing. Like, yes. Like the things that he do and say and teaches his children, and the amount of discipline that he has for himself to be there for his children.
Now, Mr. Kennedy, we are here for sentencing. The judge will make a decision of what sentence to impose in this case. What would you like to say to the judge with regard to sentencing? What recommendation would you have for him?
My recommendation is to get Othal back to becoming the loving father that he is as soon as possible, so that he can hug his children as soon as possible.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell the judge?
I don't really have much to say. I didn't really think of anything to say.
Okay. All right, Mr. Kennedy, I don't have any other questions for you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Kennedy, you can go ahead and, with the court's permission, you can go ahead and log on.
Okay.
Thank you.
So real quick, Starman mentioned the docket had some information in it, and they actually have all the letters that the judge mentioned at the beginning, like all 25 that he read, and then there was another 19 published on there. I was just clicking through them real quick, and there's a People's Legal Aid Project, which is based out of Texas, but it's registered in Florida, and they're talking about how they can help him after he gets out, and classes and this and that, and they respectfully ask Your Honor and this honorable court for leniency in his sentence, perhaps even time served with probation. That just blew my mind. Like, I don't know words.
All right, make a motion. Yes. Let me call Priscilla Williams.
Do you think you're going to walk away from shooting a cop in the head with probation? Wow. No, there's more. Just the person that's supposed to speak isn't in the courtroom. So I have to go find her. Sorry. I missed editing this out because it looked like there was talking.
Proceed.
Could you state your full name for the record, please, ma'am?
Daphne Dolores Reed.
And how do you know Mr. Wallace?
I met Mr. Wallace in 2020 during peaceful protest against injustice.
About how long ago was that?
2020.
Peaceful protest against injustice.
Where was that at? Virginia?
Georgia.
Georgia, okay. And there was a protest in Georgia at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And after, excuse me, after that event, did you stay in contact with one another?
Yes.
And how so?
Through social media, we would message each other back and forth and encourage each other and speak about different things going on in the world.
And did you have other physical contact with Othal over the next several years?
Yes, I assisted Othal with a security detail for a nonprofit organization.
Okay. And how would you describe your interactions with Othal? How is he as a person?
Othal he's actually a loving human being. He is a protector. He's a survivor. He's been through a lot in the 31 years that he's been on this earth from birth. He has been a fighter.
When you say he's been a survivor,
he has fought
I'm sorry.
to survive.
In what ways has he been a survivor?
He has, he was involved in a motorcycle accident in which there were traumatic injuries to him. And
About when was that?
I'm sorry?
About when was that?
I want to say 2000, I'm not sure of the year.
That's fine.
But he was involved in a motorcycle accident and they saved his life. And due to the injuries, I've seen the type of injuries that he's sustained on 2 different occasions. And sorry to say they did not make it. And by the grace of the Most High, he is here.
Now, do you and Othal share common religious beliefs together?
Yes, he is my brother in faith. Yes.
And describe that more. What religious affiliations do you share with Othal?
We are Israelites.
And what, in terms of
Okay, so it got really weird here. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden they stopped it, and this actually lasted for like 5 minutes or so, and then they decided to take a break in the courtroom. So they cleared the courtroom, took him out, but they never said what the actual issue was. But she said that she met him at a peaceful protest in Atlanta. Now, I'm not sure that this is the protest. So just saying that up front. However, this was a protest that happened in Atlanta, or not Atlanta, in Georgia. It's actually Stone Mountain, around the time that she says she met him. So this is likely the peaceful event that she met him at.
Black Power.
So just to give you an idea of what it was. Oh, wait, is there more? No, that was it. So that was the protest. There was a lot more that happened than just that, but that was what somebody recorded. But I have no idea what happened during this break or why they just all of a sudden took a break. I think it was something, someone in the gallery or something.
Asking about you and Othal sharing common religious beliefs and that you both were Israelites. Just very briefly, tell us a little bit more about your religion that you share with Othal. What are basically your beliefs as an Israelite?
Okay, first and foremost, we're not your traditional Israelites. We don't hate anyone, okay? We don't agree with any hate speech or anything like that. We believe in truth, justice, and freedom. We believe in the Constitution. We believe in our 2A right. Also...
I'm sorry, but has she read his Twitter and his Instagram? Because there is a disconnect.
We believe that everyone can be redeemed. There is redemption for everyone. And that is what we try to adhere to. And we practice the laws of the Tanakh, which is also known as the Torah. And we try to treat everyone the way we want to be treated.
And by the way, we're here obviously for sentencing on Othal's behalf. And so what would you like to tell the judge about Othal and what you would be asking for their appropriate sentence to be?
First of all, I do want to extend to the family of Raynor. I do understand their loss. And this is a difficult situation for both Othal's family to be in as well. This is a tragedy all the way around. And like I said, as far as Othal's sentencing, we do believe in redemption. We do believe in the laws of the constitutional parameters. And I know in my heart, he did not intend to take anyone's life.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell the judge?
That I would ask that you gracefully acknowledge the fact that his actions were not intentional. They were within the parameters of his rights, his constitutional rights as a human being, which he is.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. You call it yes to wait.
You may.
Thank you. And if you would give your full name, please.
My name is Priscilla Williams.
Okay. And I can already tell you a little bit of the soft voice. We are recording the proceedings, and if you'll just keep your voice up, and I'll just
Move it closer to the microphone, please.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Williams, are you related in any way to Othal Wallace?
Yes, I'm Othal's aunt.
Okay. And where do you live?
I live here in Daytona.
Okay. And what would you like to say about Othal as a person?
He's a great kid. He very remorseful. He will give you the shirt off his back. And I don't think he intended to do any of this that happened. So I'm sorry to the family. We all know we make mistakes. And if this was this, I just feel like this, to be bombarded like this is why my nephew is in this situation. He was bombarded and he was afraid.
Were you around Othal early
Yes.
Tell us about that.
He's a good kid. He will give you the shirt off his back. Whenever his mom asked him to do what he needed to be done, he would do exactly what was asked.
And did you see the different places that Othal would go to live at different times in his childhood?
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
He actually stayed with me for a little while he was in school and while he was working here in Daytona as a security guard.
How long ago would that have been?
It would have been, what, maybe 6 or 7 years? I don't want to...
6 or 7 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay. What about, were you in contact with him in his early years when he was going through foster care and living with other people?
Yes. To be honest, he's lived with me and my kids, and I'm part of the reason that Othal wound up in foster care.
What do you mean by that?
Because I was in a battered situation and DCF came in and removed the children, so that's why Othal wound up in DCF custody.
And when you mean by, were you in an abusive relationship?
Yes,
at the
sir.
time?
Yes, sir.
And was that with your live-in boyfriend?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was he physically abusive with you?
Who, Othal?
No. Boyfriend.
Yes, sir, he was. But Othal never intervened in any of that. He never, they would just leave, go outside. But DCF wound up taking them because I was being abused.
Were there other children, other siblings living with you at the time?
Yes, there was. My kids and his brothers, a couple of his brothers and sisters.
Okay. And were they ever witness to any of the physical abuse?
Yes, they were.
And when I describe it, hitting, beating, punching?
Yes.
On more than one occasion?
Yes.
And how did you see Othal react to the times of...
He never showed any anger. He never showed any anger. He never bothered his uncle or anything. He never was against.
Okay. So when DCF came, they took all of the children out?
Yes, sir. They did. They removed them. Mine too as well.
And they went into foster care?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you have any, did you stay in touch with Othal after that?
Yes.
When he was going through the foster care programs?
Yes. He would come by and check on me and make sure that I was okay when we stayed here in Daytona. In the land. I mean, when we stayed in the land, he would come by and check on me.
Okay. I should ask you too, when the several times that there was physical abuse on you by your live-in boyfriend, was your boyfriend physically or otherwise abusive to the children?
No, he just verbally, I would say verbally to the kids. He would say negative things towards the kids.
Like,
he didn't want them there, pretty much. He didn't want them there at all.
Anything else you want to tell the judge?
No, just be remorseful. I mean, he has a heart. He's a human. He just made a mistake. He's a human. So just be remorseful towards him. He has a family of his own as well. I know the officers did their job. They probably made mistakes as well. They just didn't take anyone's life. But be remorseful and forgive him. I mean, if you guys are officers, you should be forgiven. This is the only way we can live in this world. He has no hate towards no one. Never. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. We gotta take another brief recess. This is one of the letters that the judge read, and this came in from someone that knows Ozone, and he's talking about how he met him at the Kentucky Derby alongside Commander Grandmaster Jay's security team. They were hanging out. He's a Christian, firm believer. And then all of a sudden he interrupted Ozone and his vibe shifted, getting all defensive. I had to diffuse the situation by suggesting we save that conversation for another time, focus on the task at hand. That seemed to chill him out. We got on better terms. But I got to tell you, Judge, this dude's got a short fuse when things do not go his way. I've seen it happen with others, not just me. Then when we noticed the police gathering by their cars, Ozone starts calling them pigs and saying they looked scared seeing us all armed. He even mentioned how easy it would be to take them down with his AK. And then one of his brothers said he had his back, then he has his back. And dude says that's when I realized I was probably in the wrong place. And he wanted the judge to know he's not exactly a stand-up guy and that this militia group he is a part of, I think militia is the correct word. I'm not sure exactly what exactly the group is running a campaign that's spearheaded by the group that I just read you the letter from. And they're trying to get strangers on social media to write character references for him and send it into the judge. And it was all about the Edomites not winning the battle. I have no idea what that is. So, which is why I never joined the NFAC. The NFAC is the Not Effin' Around Coalition. They are a hate group and they seem to be playing the race card. So, that being said, it was a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. He didn't mean it. It's not hateful. No. Not at all. Wow.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you. Would you give your full name for the record, please?
Yes,
Can I just say that?
And are you related to Othal at all?
Yes, that's my cousin.
All right. And whereabouts do you live?
In South Arizona.
Okay. And families are different in some ways. Are you close to Othal?
Yes, he's the brother that I never had.
And what do you mean by that?
We grew up together. So I'm the older cousin. I'm the oldest of my mom's kids. So I wasn't particularly in foster care, but I had aged out. So when they came and got my cousin and my sisters, I had just turned 18, 2 months into all of everything that was going on.
Okay. So when Othal was being placed in foster care, you were 18 at the time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a yes for the record.
You said what?
That's a yes for the record?
Yes.
Okay. So, and did you stay in touch with Othal after that?
Yes. I initially tried to get custody of my cousin, but I was told that I wasn't old enough. And I didn't have any parenting skills.
Okay. How old are you now?
I'm 38.
Okay.
Just turned 38.
And have you stayed in touch with Othal as he had kids?
Yes.
And can you describe how he interacts with his children?
Very loving father. Very respectable. I know people are saying like he's a monster and all of that, but I don't get that from him. And I'm sorry this happened, but you know, in that moment, you never know what's gonna happen. You know, not saying that every officer is like that. You know, you get different vibes from different officers. So, I mean, I can't say what he was in that moment, what kind of fear he was, you know, because I don't know. I wasn't in his brain that day. So.
Okay. In the time frame before Othal was arrested on this, were you still in close contact with him, frequent contact?
Yes.
And still seeing him interact with his kid?
Yes.
And is there anything else you'd like to tell the court?
I'm apologetic and I'm remorseful. This happened to your family. To both families, it's hard. So I'm not, you know, discrediting the Raynor family at all. But, you know, I apologize. My cousin hasn't said it to you. I apologize that this happened to you and to the fellow officers. So I'm just asking the judge just to, you know, he's had a hard life, you know. I watched my mother get beat, so, I mean, we all had a hard life. It's just the path that we choose, you know. So, I mean, not saying that it wasn't hard, it was hard. And, you know, it's just like you can't reverse it because what's done is done. But I just ask that you look at the situation on both sides, you know, kind of saying if the roles were reversed, you know what I'm saying? So it's like it's different.
Okay. I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Write that down.
We call Jennifer Lee.
Good morning. You may proceed.
Thank you. Would you state your name for the record, please?
Jennifer Williams.
All right. And are you Othal's mother?
Yes, I am.
All right. Let me get a little background, if I may, from you. How many children do you have?
6 boys and 4 girls.
So 10 altogether?
Yes, sir.
And that includes Othal?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sir. Sorry.
All right. And where is Othal in the, I guess, the age pecking?
He's the
end?
He's the third from the oldest.
Third from?
From the oldest.
And so, where was Othal born?
Othal was born in Gainesville, Florida. First and foremost, I would like to apologize to Raynor's family. I do have to send my condolences to you all. I understand, you know, I couldn't imagine the pain, but I do understand. I'm sorry that it happened, and I hope you all heal properly. And my son is not a monster, and he's not a murderer. He didn't just go out to murder anyone, and he's definitely not a monster. So that was just an understatement. Othal is such a good father. He has 5 kids, and he takes very good care of them. Othal has not a prejudiced bone in his body, and he healed our family. He brought our family back together when they were all separated.
Let me stop you there because I want to get a little bit more detailed information about his childhood. So after Othal was born, did he continue to live with you?
Yes, me and my mother.
Okay. For the record, who's your mother?
Brenda Ann Williams.
Is she still with us?
She's deceased.
Okay. And about roughly when did she pass away?
August 31st, 2004.
And for the record, who is Othal's father?
Othal Wallace.
Is that Othal Wallace Sr.?
Yes.
And was his father active in Othal's life or the children's life?
Well, yes, he was. We were off and on because he had several different women. So he would come through and, you know, make sure Othal had things that he needed and provided those things for him.
Was his father in prison for some reason?
Yes, he did have to go to prison. So he went to prison for selling drugs.
Okay. And so for how long was his father out of the picture for that?
About 7 years.
And over the years, after his father got out of prison, did his father continue to have a relationship?
Yes, they resumed their relationship. Othal had gotten in a motorcycle accident and almost lost his life. He was in intensive care for a month, and he was in recovery for a month, to rehabilitation for a month. So it was in Central Florida, and his dad came up there. I stayed up there for the whole term, and his father came up there and bought all the things that he needed, like to bring his legs back together, the oils and the salts, and you know.
And did there come a time when DCF became involved?
Yes.
Yourself and your children?
Yes, when my sister had, my mom had passed, and I went off the rocket, you know, I went to mental hospital, and my sister cared for my kids, Priscilla Williams, and it was domestic violence in the home, and they removed the kids from the home.
Domestic violence in Brenda's home?
And Priscilla Williams' home.
Now, were you having some drug addiction issues?
Yes, I was.
And-
My results turned into drugs after my mom died, and I was in a dark world.
And did that addiction result in arrests over the years for drug
Yes, it
addiction?
did. Yes, it did.
Okay. And was that also, so let me back up actually. How old was Othal when he was taken out of the home?
About 10.
And did Othal go into, where did Othal go with that?
He went to New Smyrna. He was in, he ran for a little while, then he went to New Smyrna.
And did there come a time when your parental rights were terminated?
Yes.
Okay. Was that about the same time?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be for your parental rights to all your children?
No, just to Othal, Megan, Dion, and Simeon, and Jessica.
All right. And so where did Othal go to live after they were removed from jail?
He went to a children's home for adolescents.
Okay. And did he stay there?
Yes, because he refused to be adopted. He didn't want to be adopted, so he wanted to find me. He said that he was going to find his mother, and he had told the other kids that he would find the mother, find me, and that we would all be back together, and that he did just such.
And so what kind of gap are we talking about? He goes in the hospital and then he
we're talking about when he was like 17.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And where were you living when you got back together with him?
I was living in Broward County.
And did you continue after Othal was placed in foster care? Did you continue to struggle with your own?
Yes, I did. I was having mental health issues and drug addiction.
And can you tell the court what kind of mental health issues?
I have bipolar disorder.
Did you have that before the addiction?
Since the age of 13.
Since the age of 13.
Yes.
And, all right. And have you yourself recovered or in recovery from?
Yes, I have been clean 18 months.
Okay. Are you in a particular program for that?
Yes, I am the overseer of a sober living house.
Okay. And where's that?
In Broad County.
So now that you've, for lack of a better phrase, reunited with Othal, describe the nature of your relationship with Othal.
When Othal came back in my life, he started finding all the kids, getting all the kids together, and he reunited us all together, and we started communicating, and Othal would come check on me often, him and his friend Stephen, and he would make sure that I was okay. When I was in my addiction, he would always come and make sure that I ate. He would come to my house and make sure that everything was going smoothly in my house. Othal was just an overall good kid. He was very respectful. I mean, he doesn't have a hate bone in his body. You know, his life was saved.
Would you like to say to the judge as far as the sentencing, which is what we're here for?
Yeah, I know the court is here, but I'm asking you, please, to have leniency on him so they can unite with his family. I mean, Othal's not a bad person at all. I don't know how this took place, but I'm very apologetic for it. Just please have leniency on him so that he can be home with his kids.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. And let me call Dion.
Wait till you hear him testify. That's when it gets interesting. It's got to be it's got to be the prosecution or the defense attorney. I don't know who it is. But I want to strangle him. Like, stop. Breathing in my ear.
May proceed.
Mute your mic, dude.
Hey, would you say your name for the record, please?
My name is Dion Washington.
And are you related to Othal?
Yes, Othal is my brother.
And do you share the same family, same father?
No, we do not, but we share the same mother.
And where do you live?
I live in New Smyrna Beach, Florida.
I'd like to talk about, are you older or younger than Othal?
I'm younger. I'm right underneath Othal.
Okay. And you heard your mom testify about how many kids she's had. Is that accurate?
Yes, 10 kids.
Let's talk about your childhood growing up. So did there come a time in your life when, just before you were, let me answer this one, before you left the home with your mother, with your sibling, where were you living?
We're living in Gainesville with my grandmother, and my mom was kind of in and out of jail.
Was she having her drug addiction issues back then?
I was too young to really notice. I just knew she was in and out. I believe between like 6 and 8 maybe.
Basically, all you knew is that she was in and out of jail.
Yes.
And was she gone for a long period of time?
It would seem so. Maybe a year at a time, I don't know.
So at that time, was it basically your grandmother raising you?
Yes, it was my grandmother raising us, and Othal was pretty much a sidekick because he was very mature at a young age, and I don't know, like Othal always had a big heart, even when a lot of us failed to see it, he always like helped her out, made sure everybody was fed. And I mean, from a young age, I kind of noticed that he sacrificed a lot for the younger siblings.
So who were your other siblings living there at the time?
It was me, Megan, Othal, Ali, Simeon. I believe that's it.
And so your grandmother's raising you. Is your grandfather also there? Or?
Yes, my grandfather was also there.
Okay. And were there issues with, with poverty at that time?
Yes, we weren't the most wealthy family. Actually, we were pretty much poor, honestly. We, like I said, that's why I say Othal sacrificed a lot, because I remember times when we had to share a bowl of milk to eat cereal, and everybody want to be first. You don't want to eat behind somebody. So I remember Othal always like allowing us to eat and then coming behind, and whatever left over, that's what he ate sometimes. And at a young age, I noticed that, and it kind of stuck with me.
Was that poverty situation and food issues, did they continue for some period of time?
I would say, yes, it would be the whole period of time we were with my grandmother, because, she had, 4 or 5 kids, and then she had her kids also. And so it was a lot of us in one household, and I don't believe she had a job from what I can recall. So.
Do you remember if your mom was working? I guess she was at a...
Yeah, I don't understand the purpose of it.
I do not.
Oh, damn. Sorry. Well, at least we know we're done after him.
It was that she was in and out of jail.
Yes.
Is that where we were?
She was in and out of jail.
Yes.
Sorry.
And was she gone for a long period of time?
It would seem so. Maybe a year at a time, I don't know.
So at that time, was it basically your grandmother raising you?
Yes,
got like
it was
10.
my grandmother raising us, and Othal was pretty much a sidekick because he was very mature at a young age, and I don't know, like Othal always had a big heart, even when.
So I was trying to hit pause so I could ask you, like, this is absolutely heartbreaking. Of course it is. That's horrible what he went through, but is that in any way related to what he did as an adult? Like, telling people all of this, just the judge this, should that weigh in on his decision on how long to put him in jail for what he did?
And a lot of us felt to see it, he always helped her out, made sure everybody was fed. And I mean, from a young age, I kind of noticed that he sacrificed a lot for the younger siblings.
So who were your other siblings living there at the time?
It was me, Megan, Othal, Ali, Simeon. I believe that's it.
And so your grandmother's raised, is your grandfather also there? Or?
Yes, my grandfather was also there.
Okay. And were there issues with, with poverty at that time?
Yes, we weren't the most wealthy family. Actually, we were pretty much poor, honestly. We, like I said, that's why I say Othal sacrificed a lot, because I remember times when we had to share a bowl of milk to eat cereal, and everybody want to be first. You don't want to eat behind somebody. So I remember Othal always allowing us to eat, and then coming behind, and whatever left over,
Sorry, I went back too far.
And at a young age, I noticed that, and it kind of stuck with me.
Was that poverty situation and food issues, did they continue for some period of time?
I would say, yes, it would be the whole period of time we were with my grandmother, because, she had, 4 or 5 kids, and then she had her kids also. And so it was a lot of us in one household, and I don't believe she had a job, from what I can recall.
Shouldn't they be talking about his current character, not his character from 30 years ago?
I do not recall any word.
And then what happened to you when you were removed from that? So where did you go?
From Gainesville, we moved up to Daytona with Priscilla, our auntie, and that's where we went through getting into foster care through domestic violence against Priscilla, and in some cases when he used to get into it with her and put her outside and go to yelling and getting into it with us.
Who was
I believe his name was Glenn. Yes. And I just recall many times, as soon as she would leave the house, it would be physical violence towards us, and I remember Othal and another one of my brothers, Ali, standing up for us a lot, because, we all were young, but they definitely defended us in a time where it was, scary.
So was the boyfriend would be physically abusive, hitting you guys and stuff?
Yeah, we I remember him beating up on her, and I remember us protecting her, going after him. So we could have been the one, initiating it, but it was in defense.
She just testified
so when
that
you
that
went
didn't
into
happen.
foster care, what happened to Othal?
Actually, me and Othal, we all went into foster care together, but me and Othal went to a group home in Daytona Beach. I think it was on Big Tree, I forget the name, but we went into a group home, and I recall that time because it was the first time everyone was getting split up, and it was kind of scary. And they had split up our sister from us. It was 3 of us. It was me, Othal, and Megan, who happened to be stuck together in the same city. And they split Megan up from us, and I remember Othal coming to me plenty nights, telling me, "Hey, look, we're gonna be back with all our family, but right now we're gonna work on getting with Megan. We're gonna work on getting somewhere close to Megan." And I think maybe a week later, they came and said they were gonna split us up. And I remember Othal, in a way, kind of losing it, because, we were losing everything. There's 10 of us, and at that moment, we're all getting spread apart. And I don't recall what happened or what he did, but I remember them keeping me and Othal together, and then somehow they put all three of us in the same household. Like, and I believe that was in results of Othal like stepping up and, you know, trying to help us as a family.
Now, eventually you guys were not reunited with your mom?
Yes. Actually, when we reunited, every time it was through Othal. Like, we even had siblings, little brothers and sisters that got adopted out at a very young age and kind of disappeared because the parents didn't want them to know us as a family and they wanted to take on that. And Othal happened to be the one to do a lot of research and somehow found everyone besides our last sibling. I kind of got off track if you want to ask that again, but I just remember.
So about how long ago did you guys reunite?
We reunited maybe, I want to say 2013, 14. We reunited with her. We moved down south. Othal never moved down with us, but he was the one bringing us back and forth, picking up people, taking them, bringing us things.
So you continued to have frequent contact with your brother after that?
Othal?
Yes.
Yeah, no getting rid of Othal. He was in everybody's life. That's why he was in so many different states, city. He just always loved family and loved doing for people. So he was always making the initiative to call, to speak to us, to keep us a loving family when it was hard. My whole life, I struggled with that. I'm not very well with like my family to this day because I choose to be alone when he was a person that would get me out, you know.
Now, have you seen Othal interact with his children?
Yes. I got plenty of pictures of him bringing his kids over to see my kids, and they would play, and they love him to death. Yeah, every time I see him, actually, he brought the kids over because I have kids, and that's how we connect.
And would that interaction that you witnessed continue up to closer towards Othal's arrest?
Yes, I would even say weeks before.
Now, obviously, we're here about sentencing for Othal. Would you like to tell the court your thoughts and recommendations for Othal's sentencing?
I would like to say sorry to the family. I can imagine what y'all going through. It's tough for me. Like, I love every individual in this world, and I feel a different, like, sadness for the situation because I'm a very understanding person. I definitely look into both sides before I make a judgment, and it's a tough situation. And very sorry, very sorry.
Anything else?
Yes, I would like to speak to the judge, and I would just like to say, I feel like you're in this position for a reason, and you're gonna listen to everyone in this courtroom, regardless of what you believe, and you're gonna make the right decision. And I know my family, and I will hope the other family is gonna accept and respect you for your choice. And God bless. Sorry, we're here today. God bless.
Thank you. That's all I have, Judge.
Thank you.
I believe Mr. Wallace would like to make a statement. Would you like to be?
So I just want you to take note. Every single one of his family members said sorry to the victim's family. None of them felt overly sincere and kind of almost were offensive. But do you think the guy that did it says sorry?
You got it taped or?
Because normally when you're 30 years of your life is on the line, you say whatever you need to say to stay out of jail, right? Because that's the most important thing. Isn't it?
How you doing, Your Honor? How you doing? Yeah, Your Honor, first and foremost, I would like to take this opportunity for the first time I had to address the Raynor family and just to let them know that, you know, I certainly understand that this is a situation that was very unfortunate. And I couldn't feel the pain that they felt for the loss that they have had through this situation. What I can say is that, you know, I too am a parent, so I share the common love and understanding for a child, no matter the age. I know Mr. Raynor was older, but that doesn't dispute the fact that he was somebody's child, brother, friend, family. But I just wanted to let them know I send them my deepest condolences. And this is not an action that was personally or egregious to them as a family or just him as a person. I didn't get to know Mr. Raynor until after the fact. As you've seen in the video in the trial, we had mere seconds to find some understanding, and unfortunately we never came to any understanding at all before this whole situation transpired. But I just want to say also, you know, it's very humanly for them to feel everything that they feel.
Humanly.
Because, you know, I would feel the same feelings that they have if my child was lost in a situation or just it was an unfortunate series of events that took place and cost my child a life. So if I could look at them, I would, but unfortunately I don't want to cause any disturbances in the group. But I just want to say that I do understand their emotion, and I do, although it's not in my favor, character favor, I do respect the way they feel about what's going on. But I also want to reassure them that I'm not a monster. You know, I'm a citizen of this country just as they are, and just as every individual in here is. You know, that day I went to work just like I would any other day, you know, and I was just coming back home, winding down, and I had no understanding. I had no explanation as to why I was in this situation that had came to me, you know, in the manner that it did. And you know, if I could, you know, live the situation twice, obviously hindsight is 20/20, and I could do something different. But in the moment, you know, the fear that I felt is what generated the reaction. And I just, you know, I'm sorry that it happened, but at the same time, Judge, I want to be human about it as best as I can and just get you to understand that people have the obligation to protect themselves. And Judge, you are an elected official. You are afforded the opportunity to be protected by those who work for the establishment. I, as a citizen of this country, am not afforded that same opportunity to be covered by protection of anybody in the establishment. So as a person, I get to embrace the Constitution, and what comes with that is responsibility for self-preservation and to protect myself. And that responsibility falls on me in every situation. So I just want you to understand, you know, Judge, that is what took place in that moment. Is just, you know, me merely protecting myself from the you know, the misunderstanding that was brought to me. You know what I'm saying, Judge? So I just wanted to make sure I convey that properly.
I'm not sure I understand it.
I'm not sure I understand either. The judge said, I'm not sure I understand you. I'm not sure I understand either. You tell the family that I sympathize with you. You tell the judge, yeah, I'm sorry that happened, but, you know, nobody in this world protects me, so I got to protect myself. So it's okay if anybody comes up to me and I feel threatened, I'm just going to shoot him in the head because, you know, that's the kind of society we live in.
Okay, if I could put it in this way, there's nobody that's obligated to protect me if I'm sitting in my car.
You're not
in a night
special.
Like that, you know, there's nobody immediately is going to react to me besides me. There's nobody that can calculate what I feel and what I come to understand as a threat. So, for instance, if somebody made any act towards you, these individuals standing here today will immediately take the protective role to preserving your life. In the night I was approached, Judge, I didn't have that situation. I didn't have anybody there that would have protected me. It was dark. I was sitting in my car. I didn't understand what was going on. I wasn't doing anything wrong. So when I was aggressed in the manner that I was, I took it upon myself to protect myself in the moment, you know. And like I said, if I could live the situation twice, which I know I can't, but I would. Now that I'm seeing, there would probably have been something I could have done different, you know. And I sit in my bunk since I've been in jail the past 2 years and change. I sit all the time and reflect about all the things that could have happened, and you know, in the time that it did, and what I could have did different. And the hardest part I have understanding with is
Back the fuck down.
How we just couldn't get the understanding. Like, you know, we couldn't. I asked multiple times, like, what's going on, trying to just get some inclination as to what's happening with me. And you know, that lack of communication between Raynor and I just it equated to fear in the moment. It really did, and that's the best thing I could give you to explain my reaction.
We need to dig into this just a little bit because, you know, there was a lack of communication. It's a lack of communication. Hold on.
How's it going? Do you live here? What's going on? Sit down. Sit.
Sir.
Can you sit down? I'll talk to you.
Okay,
Stop.
come on now.
Sit.
Come on now.
Sit.
Don't do this.
Sit down.
Why are you asking me, do I live here?
Do you live here? Yes or no?
What's going on, though?
Charlie 777.
No, back up.
Stop.
Man.
Stop.
Yeah. I think there was a definite lack of communication. He didn't answer the simple question, do you live here? That was definitely a problem, right?
As far as, you know, the situation with the social media, things was happening in the country at the time. And like I said, I'm one of those who are expressive, and I made some choice words that I never intended to act upon, Judge. I have a very normal life, very you know, productive life. I have children, you know, and I was outside of my house where two of my children lived, where my girlfriend at the time was waiting for me to come home. I had just came back from seeing one of my other daughters who was at her house with her grandma. And I'm not sure if you remember the video at the trial, but right before they showed the video after the fact, there was a clip where there was a cake, and I was rubbing icing on the cake. Well, that cake was one of the first cakes my daughter got to bake, and I wanted to be there for the moment because her and her grandma had started a baking situation where she would come over and bake cookies and cake for her grandma, and this was going to be her first cake, and I didn't want to miss it. So I was explaining to her in that moment that you can't put the icing on the cake as soon as you take it out. You have to let it cool, and they had cooled. And I sat there for some time to wait on it because I wanted to help her complete the cake. And I had returned home after that. So that was kind of the you know, situation of my day after I got off work. And I was just kind of unwinding and just relaxing when I found myself in the situation with Mr. Raynor, and I was very surprised to be encountered like that because I had never dealt with that before. You know what I mean? I had never been in a situation where, you know, I was approached in that manner. I always was approached like, hey, sir, I'm such and such, you know, I got a call, you know, if you just, you know, whatever. And I got, you know, some understanding of why this situation was happening. And Judge, I just want to say to the Raynor family again, you know, the anger, the sadness, the frustration, you know, the anxiety, depression that they feel from this situation. I totally understand it. You know, I totally understand that, you know, they're suffering with the loss, and it's a reaction that anybody would have when they lose a loved one. It really is. And, you know, I just want to say to them, you know, and ask them that if they would accept my apology, because I never, you know, had anything against Mr. Raynor. It just was an unfortunate situation that, you know, brought us together. And I just hope that, you know, forgiveness can come about from this. And I want to just say also, Judge, you know, my future is at stake here. You know, Judge, it really is. And you have the, you know, the responsibility of, you know, deciding if I have freedom again or if I have to have a lengthy time in prison. I just want to reassure you, Judge, you wouldn't be making a mistake if you chose to, you know, place me on some form of community control or anything of that nature. You wouldn't be making a mistake. I have a stable living situation, Judge. You know, I have a safe environment to, you know, heal from this situation. I have a job opportunity that I will be able to take advantage of, and I just would be able to be a productive member of society as I was before. Please take into account, Judge, that I'm not a convicted felon. You know, I've always tried hard to, you know, be the best person. I've grown a lot over the years. Even with my history of minor mistakes, I've taken the opportunity to grow and develop as a person, as a man, as a father. You know, I'm a good brother to people, to my siblings. I'm a good son to my mom, and I even took the initiative of generating a relationship with my father after I met him again. And you know, it took some time, but it's been growing, and I would like to continue to move forward in my life with all the relationships that I've built with people. And I just want to say, Judge, you know, ultimately the decision is yours, and I would hope that you would consider, you know, my good character, you know, my responsibilities, my family, when you make your decision. And I respect you for, you know, the decision you do make. I just want to let you know that, you know, I am a human. I am somebody who can move and be productive again. I am worthy of being in society along with everybody else.
Yeah, so
Brother,
it's
this is your
Raynor.
first time ever getting to encounter me. You know, I don't have a lengthy situation here with the judicial system. So
No, you're just
that's
part
just
of a
all I
hate
have. I
group.
hope that you can take that into account and, you know, have mercy in your judgment. You know?
Yeah, I can do that.
Seriously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See.
I saw his defense attorneys when he started talking, like, hang their head down. I think they were like, oh my gosh, all that work we did just went out the window. Somebody said something that I wanted to reply to. So the opening the door and asking if they live there. One thing just to add to that is there was a BOLO issued earlier that day about a stolen vehicle that was very similar to his description. And he was sitting in his car. It hasn't been said exactly, but he was either smoking a Swisher Sweet or a blunt. And so when the deputy walked up to him, he started to stand up. And they talked about when the door was in between them, that's not good because you don't have the line of sight. So he walked around the door so he had the line of sight and asked him just to sit back down in his car. And that's when he refused to comply. And everything like took off in a matter of seconds. Yeah, none at all whatsoever.
As far as
Zero.
you get to go first and last.
There isn't any motion for downward departure.
This would be the time to argue that.
It's actually Volusia. They grew up in Broward.
Good morning.
But I'm sure it won't be pleasant in Volusia, with everybody knowing what he did.
I'm going to address the court and address everybody in this room and start by commenting on the fact that we don't make this motion lightly. We understand the sensitivity of the law that we are arguing here. And what I would urge the court to consider, and I hope that read through the words on the page of the motion that I filed, but the sincerity and the credibility of all of the statements that we've heard in support of Officer Raynor.
Sorry, I just wanted to correct myself. I said going to Volusia, but he's going to go to state prison. So he's either going to go to Stark or one of those other prisons. But even so, people are going to know what he did. It's just like being a child, whatever.
Here today, accepting this as true and accepting all of the wonderful things that Officer Raynor did in his life, and still giving weight and consideration to the merits of our legal motion and the fact that the case are not mutually exclusive. What we would urge the court to consider, and what we fully acknowledge, is that the court has to make a totality of the circumstances finding here. What we would encourage the court to do is be centered upon the facts of the case and the verdict and what is at issue on the night of June 21st, 2021. And to make an analysis of what those facts show and what the relative culpability of Mr. Wallace based upon the situation that he responded to. And I sincerely believe if that is the court's guiding view here, that there should be weight given to the arguments that we have in support of a downward departure. Because again, two things can be true at the same time. Officer Wallace can be a great person, a great friend, a well-intentioned officer, yet there could be a situation, just as the one that leads us here today, where tragic situations coalesced, and Mr. Wallace was placed in a situation to respond to something that he didn't have to respond to. And I think that is the essence of our argument here. The legal framework, as I'm sure the court is aware of, just to provide a segue, is that the court must make a two-pronged analysis in evaluating intent for a motion to downward departure sentence. First, has the defendant sufficiently identified a cognizable downward departure scenario? We believe that we have. We've identified one that's clearly set forth in the statute. The court must consider in connection with that whether there has been sufficient evidence presented. I would point to the court that 921.002 subsection F commands the court to view the sufficiency of that evidence with a preponderance of evidence standard. And as the court has afforded great discretion in sentencing, the court could certainly find that a statutory basis has been presented to the court, that the facts presented are above a preponderance standard, but yet the court is not in a position to exercise discretion in favor of that downward departure. So foremost, Your Honor, we point to the facts of this case, which we believe, beyond a preponderance of an evidence, show that there was a impact and an initiation of this event that was started by Officer Raynor. And that would be true whether Officer Raynor had color of law justification or not. I think we have to start at a baseline and say that Officer Raynor was the person that approached Mr. Wallace. And what I would argue to the court is that the verdict in this case and the totality of the evidence of the video, all of the failed justifications by the state to show that that video showed a probable cause or a reasonable suspicion must be viewed in light of the verdict, which we contend, beyond a reasonable doubt, suggests that there was a rejection of a lawful duty that was being executed. And when I say that with the most legal precision as possible, not to malign any intent of Officer Raynor. I think that two things can be true at the same time. That again, Officer Raynor could have had a well-intentioned but perhaps overzealous desire in contacting Mr. Wallace, or he could have had a nefarious one. I think that it's completely irrelevant for the purpose of our argument here, where the argument is the law allows the court to take into consideration, does the actions of a victim, good, bad, or otherwise, play a role on the defendant's state of mind, the situation that the defendant was placed in, and the defendant's response to that situation, and to what degree the defendant asked for, participated in, or deserved the situation that the eventual victim set in motion. And
it's actually one of the requirements for the factors for a downward departure. So the sentence of the manslaughter with the use of a firearm is a minimum of 10 point something and a maximum of 30. So they're asking for the judge to give less than that, which in my mind, it's kind of like in traffic court when you already get that reduced fine and then they still go to traffic court to fight it. It's like, dude, you just got away with murder, literally. So like, just accept that you got a outstanding verdict from the jury and go with it. Don't keep pushing it, which is what they're doing. They're pushing, trying to get lower, which I understand is the defense's job, but God, it's got to be so rough on his family. I can't imagine.
what we would suggest to the court, that is, even if in the alternate reality we would ever find, the truth of what was going on in in Officer Wallace Raynor's mind that night, I think the court is quite constrained to the verdict, which a verdict of manslaughter without any finding of a lawful duty, and then the rejection of many forms of murder that would have had to make a finding that there was some lawful duty that was being performed by Officer Raynor. And to that end, the state took great time and great pain in trying to present theories of a stolen vehicle, of marijuana use, of perhaps a diminished expectation of privacy due to Mr. Wallace being in a high crime area. All of those were vigorously vetted on cross-examination and argued in both parties' closing arguments, and we're left with a verdict which, we contend it rejects the fact that there was a color of legal legitimacy to this encounter between these two.
Assuming that I accept your argument and just assume that Officer Raynor's actions were illegal,
yes, sir.
Are you saying that justifies your client's use of deadly force?
Your Honor, I think that it, as I've cited in the motion, as is recognized by case law, that there are situations where I'll just talk about this case, I believe it's the Ty Van Lee case, Your Honor. And in that case, there was a second-degree murder conviction, and it was kind of the classic law school scenario of the victim is an initial aggressor attacking the eventual defendant with a hammer. There's a confrontation. The defendant leaves and comes back with a gun and unfortunately shoots the victim in the case and gets convicted of second-degree murder. And the parallel here is that the court recognized in the Ty Van Lee case, the statute recognizes that when there is a situation that is thrust upon a defendant, where there is provocation, where there's a violent encounter, that should be accounted as to what that does to a person's state of mind. And as that case recognizes, as several of the cases that I said in the motion recognize, even if there is a rejection by the jury of a self-defense ground, which has not been presented well enough to provide complete exoneration, there can still be a finding towards mitigation that there's a lesser degree of culpability than deserved under the sentencing guidelines. And to answer your question, Your Honor, that's where we're coming from, which is we too are confined to the jury's finding. And the interpretation of that is simply put as possible, I think, an imperfect self-defense. So I don't mean to dodge the court's question, but I think there's a nuance there in determining whether illegal force, whether deadly force was justified is not the spirit of our contention. The spirit of our contention is Mr. Wallace was put in a situation where he had a reasonable fear and a reasonable belief that something was going to happen to him that was undeserved. And there was physicality involved with that. And there was certainly some degree of force that, under the law and under the facts, that was appropriate in that situation. We stand by what Mr. Wallace said in terms of his testimony as to why he felt he needed to do what he needed to do. But I think that the court can still find a downward departure, even if it makes a finding that deadly force was not appropriate. Some force was appropriate. Perhaps the court would make a finding that he used force in excess of what was required. But that is the essence of our legal ability to ask for mitigation in that situation, is that there's a lesser degree of culpability when one responds with force in excess of what's appropriate, if that is a pure response to a aggressive initiation of something that they didn't ask for. And that's the essence of our claim. That's what we argued about very hard for in the trial, with lots of legal machinations and all, is that, what is the state of mind of a person who is innocently sitting in their car and they are interrogated, they are touched, they are grabbed, they are jostled, they are not provided information about the reason for this encounter and eventual detention, they start to walk away.
This is what irritates me. We just watched the video. He hardly touched his shoulder. I just want to go on the record and say that I would pay really good money to get Judge Stevens to sit down and watch this case and give his opinion on it. Just saying. Son of a bitch, I did it again. Sorry. I hate StreamYard. Sorry, I suck. Should fire me. Should definitely fire me. I gotta find where we're at.
It's not the spirit of our contention. There's all of this, backdrop of the evidence. At the end of the day, the universal truth is that Officer Raynor made physical contact with Mr. Wallace prior to Mr. Wallace making any physical contact with Mr. Raynor. And the undeniable last clear frame in the body-worn camera shows Mr. Wallace walking away from Officer Raynor with a tight grasp of Officer Raynor's hand on the back of his clothing.
The video is the best evidence. I saw the video at nauseam.
And Mr. Wallace responded to that situation as he did, and it is all around a tragedy. The verdict demonstrates that the death of Officer Raynor was not by virtue of any maliciousness, any premeditation, any depravity with respect to his actions, but that he acted he did an intentional act, not intending to cause the death. And I think that his testimony, the evidence, especially the way that the physical evidence manifested, showed that this certainly was in line with a panicked, fearful pull of a weapon. And I think, as the jury found, he pulled the triggers too soon, that this is an imperfect self-defense charge. So we would encourage the court very intently to make consideration on what effect sitting in a car, not doing anything wrong, and having this situation be thrust upon you would have on your state of mind, and then reflecting on that, as opposed to, I think, a more legal question of whether deadly force is appropriate in the situation. If deadly force was appropriate in the situation when it was found by the jury, then the verdict would have been not guilty. So I would like to defer the rest of our closing comments to Mr. Shoemaker to sum it up, but what we are asking the court again is to acknowledge the fact that we have presented a statutory basis for a downward departure. We believe again, more specifically, that the verdict in and of itself satisfies the preponderance standard by virtue of the jury essentially rejecting the lawful duty prong that was set forth in several of the more serious offenses. Because that verdict was a rejection of the lawful duty prong, there must be the undeniable fact that there was, at the very least, reasonable doubt as to the reason for the stop. If the reason for the stop was inappropriate, then there was an initiation by Officer Raynor, well-intentioned or not. I think that's irrelevant. We can even agree that it was well-intentioned. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Wallace was not sitting in his car engaged in criminal activity with an expectation that he would be confronted and have to deal with a law enforcement officer due to his own criminality. And because of that situation, Your Honor, we believe that there should be some significant consideration that his level of culpability under this circumstance is diminished by virtue of the tragic coalescence of all the forces that came into this case.
Thank you. You may.
Morning, Your Honor.
Morning.
Your Honor, Aretha Franklin once said, "You cannot define a person on just one thing. You can't just forget all the wonderful and good things that a person has done because of one thing." Mr. Wallace has done many great things in his life. You've heard about them today. He's a great father. He's a great brother. He's a great son. He's a great uncle. He's a great friend. There's many things that go into your decision, and I believe that those important aspects should be thought of while you make your determination based on the 3 minutes that took place on June 23rd, 2021. Your Honor, you know, our world is a kind of crazy place right now, and it certainly was back in 2021. So we can't look at this case in a vacuum. We have to look at what and try to figure out what was going on in everybody's mind. Look at what was going on in Othal's mind. You know, and you look at what was going on in our country at that time. Just to name a few, we have Breonna Taylor, we have George Floyd, we have Johnny Bolton. The list goes on and on and on. People of color that were killed by law enforcement officers. And I can't imagine what impact that has on a person of color in this country. I'm lucky I don't have to worry about that. But I can't imagine the fear that that could put in somebody's head when they're confronted with a situation that they didn't call for. It's not fair that they have to have that fear, but that fear is real. And you've heard Mr. Wallace tell the jury, you've heard Mr. Wallace tell you about that fear, and the fact that he didn't know what was going to happen to him that night. He didn't know what Officer Raynor's intentions were. He didn't know if he was going to be able to go in after sitting in his car and seeing statement. You know, I think it was Roy Bedard, the state's expert, that said that it's suspicious that Othal Wallace was sitting in his car. So it was logical for a law enforcement officer to come up and confront him. I do that probably 2-3 nights a week. Whether it's on the phone with loved ones, talking to friends. Maybe I'm listening to a song that I love and I want to hear the end of it before I walk in. Maybe it's just been a really bad day at work and I want to unwind before I go in and see my wife and kids. Because I don't want to bring that upon them. But in all the times that I do that, a law enforcement officer has never, ever stopped in front of my car, walked up, and started questioning me about what was going on.
No, I have to tell you what's a joke. You guys probably don't remember, but a long time ago, there was this attorney who acted like an absolute... Hold on, I can show you. Bingo. To Judge Manning. And all of us showed the video because it was the most unprofessional thing we ever saw. And a few months ago, he messaged me and asked me to take the video down and messaged Mike and a couple other people. And I thought, okay, he was really rude and like blew up my email before I even had a chance to respond 3 hours later. But I went ahead and took it down because I'm a nice person and I don't think it's right to, you know, cause people problems. And it's not the first time I've taken things down. No big deal. So apparently I unlisted instead of deleted. So he still has the link. So now he's threatening to sue me for defamation and all kinds of other things because I unlisted the video instead of deleted it. So tomorrow we're going to do an in-depth stream on asshat lawyers who can't control their emotions, but then want to blame everybody else for, you know, looking like an asshole all over YouTube. Just saying.
Does that justify what happened? No. But what it does is it justifies the fear that Mr. Wallace had. I don't know what I would do in a situation like that. I just can't imagine being put in that situation in the background of everything that's going on and you being involved as a person of social justice, and then all of a sudden, man, you're stuck in the middle of that situation yourself. And you have to do, like that, make a decision about what you think is going to protect you, about what you think is going to allow you to see your family and your kids. And like I said, it doesn't justify everything, and the jury said it doesn't because that's why they came back with the manslaughter. But we do believe, as Mr. Probisco argued, that a downward departure is warranted.
I told him he should Google the Streisand effect.
Look at the whole situation, how it happened. Officer Raynor approached him, backed him into a corner, put his hands on him, grabbed him, pushed him, choked him as he was trying to walk away. And the state, as hard as they tried, couldn't find any legal justification that the jury would find allowed him to do that. So when you look at the reason for the downward departure under Section 2F, did Officer Raynor escalate this? Yes. Did Officer Raynor, was he the aggressor? Yes. Did Officer Raynor provoke Mr. Wallace? Yes. And all those things are things that you can look at in order to determine whether or not we met the standards for a downward departure, and number two, whether in your discretion, whether you think it is reasonable to do. As far as the enhancement to the gun, it gives you the opportunity to give Mr. Wallace 30 years because of the firearm. But I think if you look at everything that took place on that night and all the facts that were presented and everything that we have shown in the trial and in other prior hearings, I don't believe 30 years is justified. This is a situation where the jury found obviously that he wasn't acting under the color of law and doing what he should have been doing as a law enforcement officer. He wasn't in the lawful performance of his duties. And because of that, we think that 30 years isn't justified. And again, we would ask for the downward departure into what you feel would be a fair sentence. And I'll say the rest for everybody.
Thank you. State.
Your Honor, excuse me. Your Honor, I suppose after listening to what Mr. Shoemaker and Mr. Probisco said, that any time a law enforcement officer approaches somebody and asks them a question, doing their job, trying to be protective of the community, that they are doing something unlawful and illegal. Officer Raynor was working that night. His mission was to protect the community. And Judge, I've had experience, not like the police officers that are in this courtroom today, and not like Officer Raynor, but I worked as a law enforcement officer. I went out in the community, and I experienced what Officer Raynor experienced in the sense of it's scary to go into a parking lot at night where there's been shootings. In fact, there was testimony during the trial, Judge, of one of the residents having to repair 9 bullet holes in his home the week before Officer Raynor was shot and killed. And let's remember this. The defendant, Wallace, had a gun in his pocket, according to what he said, and he pulled it out, and he aimed it at Officer Raynor's head, and he shot him, and he killed him. That is undisputed. And why? Because Officer Raynor asked him, hey, how's it going? Do you live here? The defendant made a choice, Judge, at that point in time, to oppose police officers, to oppose Officer Raynor, to be aggressive. Officer Raynor was not aggressive with him. He's, hey, how's it going? You, Judge, you were there for the trial, so I'm not going to rehash all the facts. You certainly saw everything, but it is offensive and insulting to listen to what Wallace said about the reasons he tries to explain what he did that night. State of mind, Judge? Let's talk about state of mind for a minute. What was his state of mind? Well, let's consider this. Johnny Bolton. Understand, we are at war. Johnny Bolton died at the hands of a trigger-happy SWAT team of Cobb County. These crackers are not far from seeing the blood of their own flowing thick in the gutters of America. It's war. That's certainly enough to show state of mind, but it didn't stop there. This is before the defendant brutally shot and killed Officer Raynor. Here's another example. One day, I will take great pride and honor in getting me some pig's blood on my hands and boots. If you can't feel this energy, following me is not going to be healthy for you. I pray against my enemy and wish death to all who are oppressive to the black culture, black power. Now, I appreciate and respect the family of the defendant coming in here and saying he doesn't have a prejudice bone in his body and there's no hate. But these are the defendant's own words, and they were posted publicly on his Instagram for everyone to see. There were no restrictions. Just like there were no restrictions that the defendant put in place that night. He could have sat down. He could have answered the question. He lived there. But he chose not to. Why? Because he was afraid. Judge, what about his post 15 minutes after he shot Officer Raynor and left him for dead? This was his own words, recorded and played for the public. I want you all to know something, man. I love you all. I want you all to know something, man. I love you all. Black power. Stay strong as a nation. Keep fucking fighting. Move fucking forward. Don't let these pussy-ass pigs fuck with you. I love you all. Black power and shalom. Now, I apologize, Judge, for this language, but this is what the defendant used. This is what he said 15 minutes after the murder. Judge, you saw the video, as you said, ad nauseum. It was sickening every time it was watched. The pit of my stomach just got in knots because of it. But Judge, where was the fear? They're talking about he was afraid because of these things. He wasn't afraid. He was mad. He was angry. And by God, he was going to get his due, and he did. But now that he's standing before you convicted of a crime and facing 30 years, he wants to try and backpedal a little bit. Judge, it's too late for that. As far as a downward departure, there is no substantial, competent evidence to support their argument that Officer Raynor was the aggressor, the initiator, the provoker. If that's true, then every time one of these officers goes out and talks to somebody and asks them a question and then they become evasive or won't answer it, that they can't follow up, what are they supposed to do? Turn around and walk away? These communities are begging for police officers to come and clean up their streets. The people that live there can't do it. And the police have to walk in there and do it. Officer Raynor was courageous that night, going where he knew harm was. There's no substantial competent evidence. The video is the best evidence. You've seen it, Judge. You'll make the decision based on the trial and the facts that you saw. But it's also contrary to the law. Let's not forget that there's case law and there's Florida statute 776.051 that says that it is unlawful you cannot resist. It is not justified to resist an officer, whether the detention or arrest was legal or illegal. That was codified in the state law. 776.051 and case law. And this thing about the verdict, Judge. The jury came back with a verdict. We all live with it. Those that are grateful that it happened and those that aren't. But I can tell you this: it wasn't a statement from the jury about that Officer Raynor acted improperly or unlawful. It was a compromise verdict, plain and simple. Nothing more, nothing less. And the fact of the matter is, Judge, you got the ability, the discretion to impose a 30-year sentence under the law, under that charge. And we certainly are urging you to do it. You know, I mentioned about going into these communities and what Officer Raynor was doing. You know, Judge, if there was to be what they're asking for, a downward departure. You know, officers already have a target on their back from folks like the defendant here. A downward departure would encourage that. A downward departure would encourage folks to say, well,
that's an inappropriate argument because send a message arguments.
I'm not asking you.
Not permissible.
Yes, sir. I'm not asking you to send a message. I'm just saying what I believe will happen if courts start giving downward departures when officers are doing their job. That's all, Judge.
I have to go on the record and say that I have to disregard your argument because it is a send a message.
Yes, sir.
Type of argument.
Yes,
Feel
sir.
free to believe that, but I cannot consider that.
Okay.
Legally.
The defendant, Judge, had 17 prior misdemeanors. Talks about he'd never been in that situation before with law enforcement. He was arrested on those charges, Judge. He was taken into custody, and not once did he resort to violence or force. It does. Additionally, Judge, some of those charges involve firearms, a 9mm, in fact. He was initially charged with an ag assault, and one of those allegedly pulled it and threatened folks with it. When the police arrived, they found the gun in his possession. They took it.
There's been no evidence or something. He's testifying that document is not before the court.
The prior history is before the court.
It's part of the pre-sentence investigation, the prior history.
So, Your Honor, what I'm saying here is that he possessed those firearms. He was convicted, or he pled to improper or reckless display of a firearm, improper exhibition. He was charged with domestic violence 3 times.
Judge, I'm going to object to any case that he would, the charges were dismissed, the court cannot consider.
They're in the PSI that he was arrested.
I'm not entitled to consider things that he was not convicted of.
Yes, sir. There's a lot of talk about justice. You know, Judge, when I interview youngsters that want to be prosecutors, a lot of them say they want to make justice happen, but they can't define it. My humble opinion, what justice is in this case, justice is accountability. The defendant has not, he has not accepted responsibility for what he's done. The court has the power to make justice happen here. The court has the power when it issues the sentence in this particular case. And Judge, justice equals accountability, and the defendant needs to be held accountable for what he did. And that 30-year sentence, while maybe inadequate, woefully inadequate, the way some of us feel, that's the maximum that he can receive. And Judge, with all humility and with all sincerity, I ask you please to impose the maximum sentence in this case. It is deserved, and it will hold the defendant as accountable as we can based on the jury's verdict. So thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I agree that justice is accountability. Justice has many different definitions. Justice oftentimes is incapable of definition. There's no statutory case law definition. Justice is this concept that we continually work through in this courtroom, the streets that the officers patrol, and then the office of the state attorney's office, and then offices like mine all across the country. And what is an unfortunate reality of this case is, as Mr. Wallace touched on in his remarks to the court, is the communication, and I think the lack of understanding. And I would beg of the court to consider this, is that just because a citizen is requested to do something by a law enforcement officer, justice does not require that citizen to comply. Defiance is not injustice if compliance is not required under the law. And there's a balance that must be struck on the street, in the prosecutor's office, in my office, and in this courtroom. And the balance is, to what degree does a law enforcement officer have a right to infringe upon one of the citizens that that law enforcement officer is sworn to protect? And that is the backdrop, and that is the fire that's burning in this case. A fire that apparently the state still, in its remarks that were the same remarks to the jury that were rejected by the jury, made today. That anytime a law enforcement officer comes up to you, you have to respond. You have to comply, regardless of whether there's color of law, regardless of whether it's harassing, regardless of anything. If a law enforcement officer asks you to do something, you have to do it. Your Honor, you know that that's not the law. That is not what the law requires.
I know I don't have to kill him.
I agree with that, Your Honor. But to what degree does that act of asking someone to do something that they don't have to do have an effect on the culpability that is to be considered in the sentencing court? And that's the issue. And what's disheartening is that we're not having a debate about, even if Mr. Raynor, or Officer Raynor, had done something inappropriate, to what degree could Mr. Wallace respond in kind? But instead, what we have is this complete lack of communication, lack of understanding, that in all times, in all places, if a law enforcement officer asks you to do something, you must comply. And I think until we get over that miscommunication, any reverberations of justice that might be implied from this case, we don't want the court to make any sentence that would be a message or anything other than a statement on the facts of this case. But undeniably, there are influences that every case has. And we feel very strongly that if there's not some recognition of the fact that there is a verdict that rejected on a legal and factual basis, that Mr. Raynor's approach, again, from a legal perspective, was proper, that would be a lack of accountability. That would be contrary to what the jury deliberated very hard for, I would say, over 24 hours in coming to a determination on. And if the state is coming before the court and asking you for a sentence 3 times the minimum in this case based upon a compromised verdict, how is that any accountability? That the state's argument to this court is that the best that they can say is, well, the verdict was compromised. The verdict is what we are left to deal with. The verdict is what we agreed when participation in the system that we would rely on to resolve the dispute. And the dispute was resolved in the fact that the jury rejected depravity, premeditation, the 5 different ways that the state had on the table to get a death penalty in a murder conviction. And why did they do that? Your Honor, I would urge the court to consider the old adage of oftentimes the most simple and obvious explanation is the correct explanation. And what the jury found by its interpretation of the evidence and the arguments was that this was a tragic situation. I think if they found anything other than a tragedy, you'd have a first-degree murder conviction or you would have an acquittal. And when I use the term tragedy, I use it to insinuate that, sure, there are actions and fault and intent that go on both sides. But we're considering a tragedy. There are situations and influences on both of these 2 individuals that implicitly, in the background or otherwise, that came together and caused the event. And I think that those backdrop issues, society at the time, an officer should be keen in that neighborhood. He should be proactive towards looking and identifying potential threats. But there's also a balance. There's also accountability on both sides. And so what we ask the court to do in considering a sentence is to consider foremost the facts of the case. What constraints are aligned because of what the jury found. I think there should be there's an insignificant amount of emphasis that the court should put on the social media. Because if the social media had an effect on state of mind, then why didn't we have a penalty phase? We didn't have a penalty phase because the jury made the finding that those were not proper to consider in the state of mind on scene on June 21st. So again, what has the state argued to the court?
I disagree. I disagree. I mean, I think the court can look at the entire picture, including what was presented during the trial, and making its determination in sentence.
I think you should, Your Honor. My comment on the social media is that we would request the court give it a little weight, Your Honor. We'd ask the court that you give it a little weight. I agree that you can consider all of the evidence that was admitted at the trial, and ultimately it's your discretion in interpreting that. What I am urging the court to consider is that if that evidence might be a window into Mr. Wallace's mind at the time that those posts were made, I think it needs to be considered against the backdrop of society at that time, of Mr. Wallace's life, of the fact that he is speaking, whether he is objectively reasonable in saying that or not. I think the experience of someone in Mr. Wallace's demographic and venting in that way, he had a righteous message and he had a poor way of delivering it. And that is where we want the court to consider that evidence. We argue, we understand you have discretion, but we argue that had that evidence played a significant factor in the deliberations, he would have been convicted of a higher charge. And when you couple the verdict, the social media evidence, and the actual evidence at trial, we believe that there should be significant consideration to the fact that Mr. Wallace was placed in a situation to respond to something that was undeserved for a response. He shouldn't have been in a situation where he had to be subject to interrogation about his whereabouts. He shouldn't have had to be in a situation where he was touched and forced to sit down in his vehicle. Now, certainly on the flip side, I could argue to the court, pragmatically speaking, should he have just said where he lived and been complained? Sure. Would that have changed the outcome? I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows whether that would have changed the outcome, what Raynor would have done in response, what Mr. Wallace would have done in response. But the fact of the matter, I think if the court is looking at justice and considering accountability and considering all of the things that it should, it's forced to wrestle with that very difficult question. To what degree does a person have to comply if the law doesn't require it? And to what degree is that non-compliance a degree of culpability? And, Your Honor, Mr. Wallace's response was what he believed he needed to do as a matter of self-preservation. We understand that the jury rejected an outright exoneration of Mr. Wallace's actions, but it certainly upheld, to a large degree, some semblance of support for the reasonableness of fear and the reasonableness of him responding in some way to the situation that was created by Officer Raynor having contact with Mr. Wallace that night. And that's the spirit of our plea to this court. I make no excuses in the sense that Officer Raynor did what he did and he deserved to die, or that things, if you could operate in another universe, could have been handled differently. I come to the court to ask for significant consideration on the state of mind that was influenced by a situation Mr. Wallace didn't ask for, about the fact that the state has presented to you the same arguments that were rejected by the jury. And as we trust the court will do, to make an independent decision, not swayed upon or not pressured by any outside influence or anything other than the facts of this case in which you've heard during the trial and the sentencing, Judge.
Thank you. Will each side stipulate to the credit 847 days of my best calculation as a total credit?
So I think it's interesting that he just goes straight into sentencing. Like he knew what he was going to do and he was prepared for it. And I don't think anything that happened today swayed him in that decision.
Yes, John.
Welcome, Janet.
So the defendant will receive 147 days credit. You can come up to the podium, Mr. Wallace. Okay, with respect to the basis for the downward departure that has been filed, I find that there's not substantial competent evidence and that the facts do not support a legal basis for a downward departure. I have to consider it, but I find also that even if there was a basis for a downward departure, it would not have impact
For the past 3 hours.
in any decision by the court. To the extent that your motion also addressed some sort of a quasi-proportionality analysis, which you didn't argue, I would reject that. The Supreme Court has made it very clear that we don't do proportionality analysis in cases. As far as this case, Mr. Wallace, I want to let you know that I respect you as a human being and that you have been afforded due process. I respect the process very much. I am not here to solve any social issues, and that is not the purpose of today's sentence. However, having said that, I have to tell you this much. Words matter.
Yes, sir.
They really matter. And your words are very chilling in portraying an image of you that maybe you didn't anticipate. But when those words are taken in combination with what happened here,
Yes, sir.
it sends a terrible message. I wish I could tell you that I don't know the reasons why this incident occurred, but the truth is that you clearly expressed your feelings towards law enforcement just days before Officer Jason Raynor was killed. I am convinced, more so today than at any other time, and you did not kill Officer Raynor because he was Jason Raynor. You killed him because he was a police officer. You took a simple police investigation, something that happens every single day in our community, and then you elevated it to a violent struggle for absolutely no rational reason. Officer Raynor never suspected the execution of your plan until it was too late for him, and it cost him his life. You, however, achieved your goal, getting blood in your wounds, and now you're being held accountable for those actions. Clearly, you hold nothing but resentment and contempt for law enforcement. And this country guarantees you and every citizen to hold to those beliefs that you want. You can hate law enforcement all you want. However, violence is not a way of enforcing our beliefs in a democratic society. In this case, at the end of the day, your biggest mistake was failing to take into the account that each human being has its own set of characteristics. That's what makes us different. Concentrating your dislikes for all law enforcement without regard to any other human characteristics is called prejudice. Based upon that, I'm going to adjudicate you guilty of the offense of manslaughter with a firearm. I hereby sentence you to 30 years in the custody of the Florida Department of Corrections with credit for 847 days. I require you to pay court costs and convert those court costs to civil judgment. You will have 30 days to appeal the judgment of the court. Thank you for being here. State.
Take care.
Thank you.
It's a rough one. She was meowing and I couldn't find her. It's over my shoulder. Yeah, it's like, done. I'm out. Hire someone else for the appeal. But I mean, think about it. Being a defense attorney is hard enough. But Sorry. I know, I had cattail in my face. He received the max, 30 years. And quite a scolding. I think I'm going to cut out just the defendant's speech and post that as a short clip of how not to try and sound remorseful. Yeah, he tried to appeal before and that was denied, so he's going to appeal again, but I don't know what he can appeal on. I know that there's grounds that they're going to try to appeal on, but pretty much everything went in his favor. He got such a good deal out of this trial. I mean, so many things were not let in at trial about all the malicious stuff and all of the crazy stuff he posted. Only a few of his social media posts even got in. So, yeah, I don't foresee an appeal going through. I hope that in the next 30 years, he learns how to not be a psycho and realizes that he's not special. And you don't get to just randomly shoot people, especially cops. Like, that's not how life works. Yeah. Well, I was going to write a book and then I realized they probably can't or won't read it. So we might just do a little YouTube stream. We might have to animate it to get them to watch it, right? Cartoons, lots of colors. That's what attracts children. We'll see how it works. All right, everybody. It's been a long 3 hours. I hope you have a fabulous, fabulous evening. And if you haven't already done so, I suggest you go somewhere in my history and look up the Holderman case. It is, what would it be called? It's something about families fighting. It's Judge Ricky. Sorry. Oof, I'm tired. I have an update coming out tomorrow. So it's the man passed away and his will was leaving everything to his parents. But his parents passed away before him. And he specifically disinherited his children in his will. So he has children, they're disinherited. His parents are deceased. All of his brothers are deceased. 2 of his brothers have daughters. One of them may or may not be legitimate. And there is this massive fight between the children that were disinherited, their children, the niece, and then the possible niece for who gets his estate. Decent sizable estate. And I can't remember what it's called now. It was some time ago, but they just had an update today, like a 3-hour update stream. And Saul Goodman said it's a good one. It's called Everyone Wants a Piece of Relative's Estate. Man disinherits his children. It's on page 2. If you look at my videos, it's on page 2 from September. It's Judge. I'll put a link in the community section. You should go watch it if you haven't watched it. It's a crazy case, and I'm going to have an update on it tomorrow. So the landlord-tenant thing that Cha was asking about, we are not going to have a video on that because basically the courts are done with it. The court says, here's your order. This is your eviction order. You have 10 days to get out of their house. And if you don't, then what they have to do is go to the court, pay $15, and the sheriff will actually do the eviction, which means one of the deputies will drive out to the house and physically remove them from the house. Hopefully they walk out on their own. If not, they will drag them out and remove their stuff. Like, it has to happen right then. And what they do is restore ownership to the person that rightfully owns the house. So It's an eviction. All your stuff gets put outside. You're done. But there's no video of that. I mean, I guess we could always FOIA the body cam if they wear body cams in St. Joseph County. But I imagine both of them were smart enough to get out before the sheriffs come to drag them out. But if anybody's in St. Joseph County and you see a big 35-foot, RV being pulled down the road, let us know. All right. You all have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.